There's a female crawling on the road. She's missing an arm and she's bloody.
She fought until the bitter end after being beaten and left for dead in Livermore, naming her attackers before taking her final breath.
Family received more details on a brutal attack the day after 19-year-old Lizette Cuesta was killed. Tonight, her father remembers his oldest daughter as his brave girl.
They have to pay for what they did. I mean, it won't bring her back.
This victim really tried to survive, and she fought, and she fought.
Like, I couldn't believe that my friend was gone.
She was the mastermind of it. There was just all types of things that were said and done, and I didn't put two and two together.
An extraordinary incident occurred on February 12, 2018, in Alameda County, California. At 3:15 in the morning, the 911 dispatch service received an emergency call. A male voice reported discovering a severely injured young woman on a desolate stretch of Tesla Road, a two-lane highway in the foothills of Livermore, where nighttime traffic is minimal. A group of workers, heading to a neighboring town for the night shift, noticed something unusual on the roadside. Initially mistaking the object for an injured animal, they observed movement and decided to stop and investigate. Upon approaching, the men were horrified to discover a bloodied human figure, barely alive but still conscious. But before we dive in, make sure to subscribe to the channel. It really helps push stories like this to more people. And drop a comment letting us know where you're watching from and what time it is there. We love seeing where our audience is tuning in from. The victim was on the verge of losing consciousness but was still holding on. Numerous cuts covered her body, and blood soaked her hair so thoroughly that it was impossible to determine its natural color. The situation was complicated by the complete absence of mobile phone coverage in this remote area. Every minute of delay reduced the chances of saving the assault victim. The rescue operation unfolded immediately. The driver had to leave the scene and urgently head to the nearest location with telephone service to call emergency services. His colleague, named Richard, stayed with the injured woman. Recognizing the critical nature of the situation, he covered the girl with a blanket, tried to maintain conversation to prevent her from losing consciousness, constantly reassured and encouraged her, understanding that the question of life and death of a stranger was literally in his hands. Precious time was passing, and the girl's condition was deteriorating with each minute. Richard desperately fought for her life, not letting her fall asleep, fearing that sleep in such a condition could be fatal. This chance witness became her only hope for salvation in those critical minutes. Upon arriving at the scene, the medical team immediately assessed her injuries as absolutely incompatible with ground transportation to the hospital. The main injury, a deep cut to the throat, required immediate aeromedica eye evacuation. A helicopter became the only chance for survival. Otherwise, transportation by ground ambulance could have proven fatal. Despite all emergency measures and the efforts of medical professionals, the victim of the attack died shortly after hospitalization. The medical examination revealed approximately 30 stab wounds, predominantly concentrated in the neck area. Before her death, the girl managed to state her name, Lizette Cuesta. The extraordinary willpower and persistent desire to survive, demonstrated by this fragile girl in the face of mortal danger, later played a crucial role in the investigation and apprehension of the criminal.
I hope it will be encouraging to her family to know that their daughter did have that spirit to fight.
And she was a fighter, for real. She was a fighter. She was fighting for her life.
The victim's biographical data indicated an active, cheerful, purposeful personality. A native of San Jose, California, Lizette had graduated from high school in 2016 and enrolled in college. From an early age, she had been passionate about skateboarding, consistently maintained an athletic lifestyle, and had an attractive appearance and a cheerful character. Lizette's professional ambitions harmoniously combined with a rich social life. While studying at college, she found time for meeting friends and entertainment. She was characterized as an energetic, sociable girl who positively influenced those around her and seemed to charge everyone near her with her energy.
Just the most committed, loving, like when she would show up to the park, everyone would be like, oh, it's Liz. Like everyone would get in a good mood because her smile alone would brighten up a whole room.
Just how she would always laugh, and she was mainly really polite to everyone.
About a few months before the tragic incident, Lizette and her father had moved to the city of Tracy, located approximately an hour's drive from their former residence, the family home in San Jose. The change of location was a conscious and deliberate decision by the girl, who sought a calmer living environment. At the same time, she did not sever family ties, but, on the contrary, maintained close relationships with all members of her family, regularly visited her mother's ranch, where she enjoyed horseback riding. According to her father's testimony, the last time he saw his daughter alive was literally the day before the fatal attack. During their last meeting, he noticed no signs of anxiety or problems. Lizette remained as cheerful, positive, and communicative as always. Nothing foretold disaster. Characterizing his daughter, the man especially emphasized her courage, determination, strength of will, and striving for independence.
Everybody knows how tough she was, how strong she was, She showed that at the end, always.
These qualities, in his opinion, prompted Lizette to move to improve her living conditions. Her plans were first to achieve financial stability and get on her feet, and only then to create her own family. For her father, the brutal attack was a completely unpredictable and devastating tragedy. He could not even imagine who would want to harm such a bright and positive personality, who seemed to have no enemies or ill-wishers. He was convinced that Lizette, as always, fought until the end, but unfortunately, this time she could not win. After moving to Tracy, Lizette and her father did not spend much time looking for housing. They quickly found a suitable apartment, rented it, and settled in at the new place. Her father fully supported his daughter in her aspiration for independence. The girl immediately actively started looking for work and soon found employment at a private company owned by 25-year-old Melissa Leonardo and her 19-year-old partner Daniel Gross, who was also the father of her unborn child. Lizette began a new stage of her life, full of hopes and plans for the future. Initially, the relationships at the workplace remained purely professional, but gradually the situation began to change. Work relationships unexpectedly went beyond professional boundaries when the young man, Daniel Gross, showed romantic interest in Lizette. Their communication became increasingly closer and more personal, which eventually led to the development of a romantic relationship between them, which would later have fatal consequences for the girl. The relationship between Lizette and Daniel developed despite the fact that during this period Melissa was expecting his child. Moreover, the couple was engaged. Interestingly, from the beginning, Lizette was aware of all this. The boyfriend even proposed a three-way relationship to Melissa, but she believed that such a format would not be suitable for a couple with a baby. Daniel did not give up. He wanted to build a relationship with Lizette but was not going to leave his pregnant fiancée. After prolonged persuasion, Melissa agreed to try. During this period, Daniel's mother was living with the young people. At some point, the woman learned about the relationship format her son was experimenting with. She immediately expressed her displeasure and asked Daniel to make a choice, explaining that such experiments would not end well, but he was categorically against it and asked his mother not to interfere in their affairs. The woman did not push. She met Lizette and became friends with her. The woman had a good attitude toward her son's new girlfriend. When the attack occurred, Daniel's mother informed the police that she believed Melissa was guilty of this crime, as she had previously been negative toward her rival. According to Daniel's mother, about a week before the brutal reprisal, she heard with her own ears how the girl openly discussed how Lizette could be punished. Melissa did not approve of the love triangle from the very beginning, but Daniel somehow managed to convince her. All this caused great tension for the future mother. Daniel's mother came to the police with a sense of guilt. She worried and believed that if she had immediately reported this to law enforcement, it would have helped prevent the girl's murder. But, unfortunately, at that time, the woman did not suspect what it could lead to. Despite the fact that Melissa was expecting a child from her son, the woman sincerely considered it her duty to share her suspicions about the pregnant woman. From the very beginning, she did not approve of Daniel's relationship with Melissa and thought that he would be much better off with his new girlfriend, Lizette. Now she believed that the love triangle had gotten out of control and ended in bloodshed.
She was the mastermind of it. There was just all types of things that were said and done, and I didn't put two and two together. If I had, that girl would probably still be alive.
And when you say she, you're talking about Melissa.
Melissa.
So you think she is?
Yes, I do. Because when Lisette started working there a couple months ago, I don't know how long, it was like two and a half months ago, she adored Daniel. And she didn't hide it or whatever. Everyone at her work knew that she liked Daniel, you know, and she couldn't help it. And he's just that type of person. He's a likable boy. And I know if it wasn't for her, he wouldn't have done it. She's just as guilty as he is. And I think she's the one that did it because of her jealousy. I wake up with nightmares thinking what that girl went through. And I can't believe my son had anything to do with it.
By that time, detectives already knew the names of the culprits, which the victim had told them before her death. About 10 hours after Lisette was found on the road, at 1:15 in the afternoon, police officers arrived at Daniel's house, where Melissa and the young man's mother also lived. This place was located approximately 50 kilometers from the deserted road where the criminals had left the girl to die. The arrest was quite dramatic. The house where the couple was located was surrounded by an entire Special Forces unit. One of the snipers even used a neighboring child's treehouse as an observation point. Neighbors from 2 adjacent houses were evacuated but were nearby and could observe what was happening. The preparation for the assault was noticed through the window by the story's protagonists themselves. Daniel, along with his mother, was very alarmed by what was happening, but they all tried not to panic. Then law enforcement officers ordered the young man's mother to leave the house. They began the arrest, demanding that the criminals come out and surrender. Neighbors who lived near the couple were shocked. At this point, the young people had been living there for about 3 years and were not very sociable, so little was known about them in the area.
Well, I don't know who they were. I don't know them by names. I would always see like different people coming in and out from the house, so I know it's probably something suspicious going on out there.
They said, get out when the hands up, and we know that you're there.
A lot of people were surrounding this house a lot, and there's a lot of cops surrounding that house. Like they're making like a little circle, and we were right over there hiding.
Of course, the arrest by a Special Forces unit provoked a huge number of different rumors. All that the neighbors could tell the police was that the young man had attended the local high school but had not graduated, and his girlfriend had studied at another educational institution nearby and had received a diploma. That's where the information ended. Several people suggested that this arrest might be related to prohibited substances, as various friends came to visit the young people. Sometimes new faces appeared there, and such a flow inevitably attracted attention. They decided that the couple might have been selling illegal substances, but nothing like that was found during the investigation. When the suspects were leaving the house, Melissa was still in her pajamas. They were caught by surprise, resting after the bloody reprisal. After this, the police talked to the couple. Unfortunately, the young people were reluctant to cooperate with the investigation. With difficulty, they managed to get the young man to talk, who quickly admitted to the crime, but with great reservations. According to Daniel, Lisette had gotten into the car that evening, in which he was with Melissa. They went for a ride, smoked marijuana on the way, and drank. Melissa was driving, and her fiancé was in the back seat with Lisette. The pleasant evening turned into intimacy in the back seat. According to the young man, everyone supported polyamorous relationships, so he considered what was happening normal. All this time, Melissa was driving. According to Daniel, he used a yellow rope to tie Lisette up. This was their role play, and it happened by mutual consent. Then, according to him, there was sex, and what happened next, the young man described very vaguely. According to him, they turned toward a remote 2-lane road to Whirl Hollow, where the victim was later found. Here, Lisette unexpectedly behaved aggressively and attacked. Everything was like in a fog, but he remembered how he got scared and therefore was forced to defend himself. The situation instantly got out of control. Daniel knew that Lisette had a knife and was afraid that the girl would use the cold weapon. At the beginning of the polyamorous relationship, he himself had given it to Lisette for self-defense. so she would feel safe when skateboarding in the evening. The young man could not allow Lizette to use it for an attack, so he began to act preemptively. Daniel long evaded answering the question about what provoked him. The young man didn't even have wounds that could be received during an active struggle. It seemed as if Daniel had not resisted at all. This part of the testimony was repeatedly changed, generally sounded very confusing and illogical. As a result, Daniel abandoned the idea of a knife attack and reported that Lizette had provoked aggression by starting to hit him with her elbow on the ribs. The young man became enraged and they began to fight. He himself had a knife, which quickly came into use. Melissa remained calm all this time, as if nothing unusual was happening. Of course, self-defense seemed like an implausible explanation for the appearance of about 30 stab wounds on Lizette's body, including a cut throat. All this spoke of the extreme cruelty of the attack. Daniel emphasized that his pregnant lover was behind the wheel the entire time and did not participate in the attack. After Lizette was cut, he stopped and realized what had happened with horror. The couple decided that giving birth to a child while under investigation was a bad idea, so they simply left the body on the roadside and drove away, believing that the girl had died. All this was happening in February in California, and although it was a fairly warm region, it was quite cold at night, and it was assumed that the victim, even if she survived the stab wounds, would not survive the cold night. At the place where Lizette was found, an extended blood trail was also discovered. Despite the injuries received, the girl crawled about 100 meters, hoping to get help. The police followed this bloody trail and found the yellow rope that Daniel had mentioned. The victim had been tied with it. While Lizette was alive and conscious, she told about what she had to go through. Not only was the brutal attack the most difficult moment, but also the search for help. Although the road was deserted, she quickly saw the lights of an oncoming car. She even tried to wave to it. Unfortunately, she wasn't helped. Behind the wheel was an elderly woman who didn't stop, possibly because she was scared. Lizette hoped that the driver would at least call the police. The random lady driver did just that. And then a group of men drove by, one of whom, Richard, stayed with her, and the second went further to catch a signal. Fortunately, Lizette encountered caring people who tried their best to help her. Otherwise, the victim would simply have died and would not have had time to tell her story. The news of their daughter's death was a real nightmare for her parents and everyone who knew her. They were grateful to the random witnesses who did not pass by but stopped and contacted the police, spent most of the time with her. Lizette fought for more than an hour, during which time she managed to repeat the story of the attack to several witnesses, to the medics who desperately tried to save her life. The fact that she survived this attack and lasted so long was very lucky. Lizette turned out to be so mutilated that even identifying the body could have taken quite a long time. She did not have documents or a mobile phone with her. Relatives would not have reported her missing so quickly, as they lived in another city. All this could have turned the bloody attack into a perfect crime, and the criminals responsible for the atrocity would have continued to roam free. But unfortunately, Lizette could not tell in detail in such a condition in the last minutes of her life. It seemed unclear what degree of guilt each criminal had. The rescue operation with the helicopter took place. The girl was delivered to the medical center. Unfortunately, it was too late. At 4:30 that same morning, she died. The main cause was blood loss. At the time of her death, Lizette Cuesta was only 19 years old. After the arrest, Melissa did not cooperate with the police, did not give any answers to questions at all. Daniel was also reluctant to communicate with investigators. Still, they managed to get him to talk, and the young man gave valuable confessions. Despite the fact that the police did not believe his story, he nevertheless agreed that he had stabbed the girl. All this aroused colossal interest from the media. Journalists bothered not only the families but also the police. Several reporters even broke into the police station, wanting to be present at the young man's interrogation. Of course, this was refused. This provoked many rumors, unwanted attention from outsiders, which additionally traumatized the Cuesta family. The fact that the police had detained the real criminals was obvious. It remained unclear what role Melissa played in the reprisal, whom Daniel was so desperately covering for. It was also necessary to prove the intentionality of the crime. detectives reasonably believed that dozens of stab wounds were a sufficient basis for such assumptions. It was believed that this recreational trip in the car was not accidental. From the very beginning, the criminals knew that Lizette would not survive this night, and they lured her to a deserted place. Against this background, the young man's entire story about voluntary tying and sex in the back seat could be a puddle. From the very beginning, Daniel tried to attribute everything to self-defense or chance, but he had deliberately lured Lizette into a trap. The binding was regarded as a violent act that ended in bloodshed. But no matter how hard the detectives tried, the young man refused to admit that the murder was planned in advance. Instead, the suspect insisted that he could not properly explain his actions. He described the incident as if he had some kind of click in his head, after which he could not control himself. Daniel repeated again and again that he repented and hated himself for this terrible attack. He wanted to apologize to Lizette's relatives, but for a long time he doubted, as he was not sure that the victim's family would want to accept an apology. However, that's what happened. It was obvious that the criminal was lying, but he insisted on his latest version. Melissa continued to remain silent and denied any involvement in the attack. Daniel was being deceptive. He simply refused to answer some of the police's questions, particularly regarding the motive. An elbow strike from a tied-up girl seemed implausible and could hardly have provoked the young man to such aggression. Daniel himself believed that he might have lost control of himself due to smoking marijuana that evening. Trying to understand Daniel's personality, investigators spoke with Melissa, but she also did not want to cooperate. Then they found the young man's former girlfriend named Jacqueline, who even had a 1-year-old son from the suspect. According to her, sometimes Daniel exhibited a very dark and aggressive side of his character. In such moments, he barely controlled himself. Despite this, even the ex-girlfriend doubted that he was capable of inflicting about 30 stab wounds on a defenseless girl because of a minor elbow push. Before this attack, he had not been noticed in violent crimes. The young man had no criminal record. Meanwhile, Daniel himself continued to insist that it was self-defense. Of course, the number of blows was much more than needed to stop an attack. The stubbornness only strengthened the distrust of the suspect's words. Jacqueline even appeared in the media. She was shocked, realizing with whom she had lived that the child was so close to people capable of bloody reprisal. Despite the fact that her ex-boyfriend had confessed, she believed that Daniel could not have been the driving force in this attack. The girl knew Melissa, considered her a cunning manipulator who simply took control of her fiancé and brought these absurd polyamorous relationships to a bloody massacre. Even if the knife was indeed in Daniel's hand, there was a lot that was strange. Why did Melissa drive on a deserted road to such a desolate area? Why didn't she go to the police after the murder, but simply calmly went to sleep? It seemed that she was not at all concerned about what had happened and perceived it as something ordinary. The young man's mother also joined the discussion. She immediately said that she was not going to justify her son if it really turned out that he was a criminal. However, she believed that Daniel, due to his character, could not be the driving force behind this crime. Such cruelty was not characteristic of him. The woman believed that the fiancé could have used something to incite and cloud his consciousness. Possibly, she slipped something into his drink. He went crazy and completely obeyed her instructions. Daniel's mother related that a few days before the murder, she noticed Melissa's suspicious behavior. The girl was angry and repeatedly brought up the topic of Lizette, expressed herself very negatively, even saying that she wanted her death. At the same time, Daniel was calm and even reassured her. The woman saw how quickly the daughter-in-law took control of all spheres of her son's life. The young man was subjected to manipulations. After just a few months of the relationship, Melissa was watching literally his every step. The manipulative behavior even caused tension between the young people and the woman. Detectives checked the mobile phones and computers of the suspects. Here, they could not find any valuable information. Probably, they used ordinary verbal communication to discuss the details of the future murder. But when checking the geolocation data, investigators noticed an interesting detail. The company did indeed drive around the city that evening, but after midnight, they suddenly went far from the usual route. Going out of town to a deserted road seemed inappropriate, atypical for them, which they decided to use as another indirect confirmation of the intentionality of the murder. The investigation had substantial evidence against the couple, which included Lizette's story, told in the last minutes of her life immediately to several witnesses. The problem was that law enforcement could not record it, so oral testimony could be challenged in court, even considering that different people were telling the same thing. Unfortunately, this was not enough as irrefutable evidence. It was necessary to confirm the deceased's words about the attack on her by Daniel and Melissa. Investigators headed to the house where the couple of killers lived. Here they found many pieces of evidence that linked them not only to the victim but also to the crime scene. In particular, an identical rope was found in the garage, as well as in the car used by the couple. A cut of this rope was also found at the beginning of the bloody trail left by the victim. The car in which the reprisal took place had not been cleaned of blood. Clearly, all of it belonged to Lizette Kesta. Charges could be brought, but so far only against Daniel. The knife with which the girl was beaten to death was found. Only the young man's fingerprints were on the handle. Melissa left traces only on the steering wheel. She had no direct relation to the execution. However, a lot suggested that she pushed her lover to this crime and controlled what was happening. In the courtroom, the families of the defendants and Lizette were on different sides, but the distance between them was small. The atmosphere from the very beginning was very tense. Everyone was waiting for an explosion. Of course, it happened when Daniel was brought into the hall. One of the deceased's relatives stood up and started yelling at him. The man was ready to tear the killer to pieces. In a rather unflattering form, he said that subhumans have no chances against them. It seemed that the discontent could grow into something more, but they still managed to hold back. Unexpectedly, Daniel's lawyer shocked everyone by announcing that the client intended to confess to murder using a deadly weapon, inflicting serious bodily harm, and all this with aggravating circumstances.
Daniel has been absolutely committed to accepting responsibility for his friend's death. And he proved that when he confessed to the police at the very outset, and he has proven it today by entering his guilty plea to these charges.
This concerned all the charges brought against the defendant. The defense immediately asked not to allow the media into the courtroom, after which reporters were let out, at least for the time of the discussion. However, everything ended quickly. The hearings resumed, and the mass media were later admitted to this high-profile process. The killer's statement was a big shock and relief. Lizette's family had already prepared for a protracted battle in court. Still, questions remained. Daniel admitted his guilt, but did not specify the degree of murder. Probably, it was necessary to hold a hearing at which this criterion would be determined. Under state law, for second-degree murder, the punishment was from 16 years to life imprisonment. For first-degree murder, from 26 years to a life sentence. In the end, the young man admitted guilt in first-degree murder, which was another unexpected step. The defendant did not enter into a deal but justified his decision by saying that he wanted to somehow soften the blow for Lizette's family. In this way, he decided that they would be able to avoid a protracted trial, which would be traumatic for everyone. It seemed that the young man was truly remorseful. Pity, it was too late for emotions. Melissa also remained under arrest. The prospects here really frightened her. The girl was far from the criminal world, especially in a delicate position. She continued to deny her involvement in planning, organizing the conspiracy, and everything else. In particular, because the victim herself named the two criminals, Daniel and Melissa, and therefore she also participated in the attack. However, the process dragged on. The lawyer insisted that the client be released, in particular, referring to the pregnancy and stress, which could lead to a miscarriage. In the end, this worked. She was sent under house arrest during the preparation for the trial, but the investigation continued. 5 years passed, and now 30-year-old Melissa was in the dock. She was found guilty. The lawyer of Daniel, who turned 24 in prison, had been fighting all this time for a mitigation of the decision and a review of the young man's case. The defender managed to achieve this progress. The knife attack was attributed to a mental illness that causes hallucinations. Melissa, meanwhile, was recognized as the person who became the sole inspiration for this brutal reprisal. According to Daniel's defense team, the girl used prohibited substances to provoke the appearance of hallucinations in her boyfriend. The girl knew about his problems and took advantage of the instability of his psyche. Having drugged him with preparations, Melissa was easily able to push the young man to a bloody massacre. Both were sentenced to 15 years in prison, and Daniel was given an additional code for using a knife as an aggravating circumstance. Lizette's relatives were not entirely satisfied with such a mild decision. Plus, it still didn't return the wonderful person to them. However, they believed that justice had prevailed. At least Melissa also got what she deserved. No one managed to escape justice thanks to the brave girl who fought until her last breath and helped solve her own murder. Summarizing this case, one can say one thing: the human psyche is not a field for experiments. Society is changing, relationship models are becoming more flexible, but emotions remain the same: jealousy, pain, fear of loss. And when love, distrust, aggression, and pharmacology are woven into one story, the result is predictably frightening. This is not a call to moralize or an attempt to impose rules of life. But everyone who enters into non-traditional relationships must honestly answer a simple question: is my brain, my psyche, my heart ready for this? Because freedom is not only a right, it is also a responsibility. The girl in this story was not an enemy. She simply believed in love, in her role in this equation. But the equation turned out to be unequal, and for the mistakes of others, she paid with her life. The moral of this story is simple and harsh. Human relationships are not a game of roulette. It is a deep risk, where the main prize is not passion, but peace, security, and mutual respect. Watch your children. Explain to them that love is not chaos, not drama, and definitely not an experiment. It is a choice. And who we let into our lives can even depend on our survival.
In a shocking and heartbreaking incident, 23-year-old Mexican beauty influencer Valeria Marquez was shot dead while live streaming on TikTok.
Valeria Marquez, a 23-year-old Mexican beauty influencer, was tragically shot.
A social media influencer is shot to death while doing a TikTok live stream at her beauty salon just outside Guadalajara in central Mexico.
Ya viene. Sí. Hola. Sí.
Femicide is not something from a textbook. It's happening right now in Mexico. The most terrifying thing is that the rates of femicide are increasing every day. Just in the last month, more than 500 women were killed, with approximately 80 cases classified as femicide murders, where the victim's gender was the motive. One such case was the murder of Valeria Marquez. It was so brazen that she was killed during a live TikTok broadcast in front of thousands of viewers from her audience. Before we dive in, let me know in the comments which city you're watching from and what time it is they're in. Don't forget to hit subscribe. Your support helps push this video to more people, and it could literally save someone's life. Valeria Marquez was born in 2002 in Guadalajara, cultural and economic capital of Jalisco State, Mexico. She was only 23 years old and was known as a model and beauty influencer. It's worth noting that Jalisco is one of the most dangerous regions in the country, especially due to drug cartel activity. The notorious Jalisco New Generation cartel is particularly active here. Valeria's family belonged to the middle class. Little is known about her parents, but they always supported their daughter's career aspirations. Details about her childhood remain largely unknown. She received her secondary education at one of the schools in Guadalajara, where she already showed considerable interest in fashion and beauty. Available data does not indicate any connections between her family and the criminal world, although her personal life later seemingly intersected with such circles. Valeria's career began in 2021 when she won a local beauty contest, Miss Rostro, Miss Face. This became the starting point of her public activity. She began actively developing her social media presence, especially on Instagram and TikTok. By the time of her death, her audience numbered approximately 220,000 followers on TikTok and over 100,000 on Instagram, an impressive growth over such a short period. Mexican media report that Valeria systematically built her career in the beauty industry. After winning the contest, she focused on creating content for social network, sharing makeup tips, self-care advice, discussing fashion trends, and showcasing her travels. Her Instagram often featured photos from private jets and yachts, indicating a rather affluent lifestyle. In 2023, Valeria opened her own beauty salon, Blossom the Beauty Lounge, in the Zapopan district of Guadalajara. Zapopan is the largest city in Jalisco state, known as a wealthy area, although the crime rate there is high. The salon was located in the Santa Maria shopping center in the prestigious Val Real neighborhood. The salon became not only Valeria's business, but also a platform for creating content. She often conducted live broadcasts from her workplace, showing procedures and communicating with followers. Acquaintances spoke of her ambitions to expand her influence in the beauty industry and develop a network of salons. There isn't much reliable information about Valeria's personal life. Local media reported that for some time, she was dating a man nicknamed El Doble R, double R, or El Tripa, Tripa. His real name is Ricardo Ruiz Velasco. According to unofficial data, he has connections to the Jalisco New Generation cartel, although authorities have not officially confirmed this information. Valeria Mark's life reflected the contradictory reality of modern Mexico. On one hand, she was a successful young businesswoman and influencer who independently built her career. On the other hand, she lived in an environment where criminal structures significantly impact everyday life. The last months of Valeria's life were filled with social media activity. Her posts indicated business development and plans to expand her audience. There were no obvious signs of anxiety or fear in her posts, although later events showed that she might have felt some threat. 2 months before the tragedy, Valeria published a TikTok video where she posed with her friend influencer Vivian. The caption spoke about their beauty and the absence of signs of a quarrel. This video later became an important element in the investigation of her murder. Valeria's profile was dominated by photographs from luxurious places and events. She regularly received expensive gifts from fans, which according to some versions could have provoked jealousy in her circle. Such presents were a common occurrence in her life, as her friend Vivian later mentioned. A few weeks before the tragedy, Valeria did not publicly express particular concern about her safety. However, in her last broadcast, she mentioned strange attempts to deliver a gift to her, which raised her suspicions. This may indicate that she felt some danger but perhaps did not take it seriously enough. Valeria lived in a region with high levels of violence. Jalisco ranks 6th among Mexico's 32 states in terms of murders. According to the consulting company T Research, from October 2024 until Valeria's murder, 906 murders were registered in the state. In such a context, a young woman leading a public life and displaying signs of affluence could easily become a target for criminals. Her salon in Zapopan was located in an area which, despite its wealth and well-maintained streets, is one of the most dangerous municipalities in Jalisco. Shootings regularly occur here, even in luxurious shopping malls. However, according to Zapopan Mayor Juan Jose Frangi, Valeria never approached the authorities regarding threats against her. On May 14, 2025, at 6:30 in the evening, the horrible murder of Valeria Marks occurred. The tragedy unfolded in her own beauty salon, Blossom the Beauty Lounge. The most shocking detail is that the murder took place during a live TikTok broadcast that Valeria herself was conducting. Thousands of her followers became witnesses to this horror in real time. According to data from the Jalisco State Prosecutor's Office, before the tragedy, 2 men on a motorcycle arrived at the salon. One of them entered and asked if Valeria was present. When she confirmed it was her, the man pulled out a weapon and shot her at least twice, once in the chest and once in the head. In the last minutes of her life, Valeria was conducting a live broadcast. she expressed concern about a stranger who allegedly brought her some expensive gift. In the video, which instantly spread across the internet after the tragedy, Valeria is sitting at a table. In her hands, she's holding a soft toy pink pig received earlier that day. During the broadcast, Valeria suddenly said, "They're coming." Then a male voice was heard in the frame. "Hey, Vale." She simply answered yes and turned off the sound. A moment later, the girl suddenly grabbed her chest and stomach and then fell onto the chair. After this, someone took her phone, and for a brief moment, this person's face flashed in the frame before the broadcast was cut off. The Zapopan police received an emergency call. When municipal police officers arrived at the scene, they confirmed Valeria's death. According to official data, she received 1 shot to the chest and 2 to the head, which led to instant death. At the time of the police's arrival, Valeria's body was still sitting in the chair, and the pink soft toy remained in her hands. The video of the murder spread like wildfire across social networks, although platforms tried to remove it due to its shocking content. Thousands of Valeria's fans became involuntary witnesses to her death in real time. This event caused a huge wave of shock and indignation both in Mexico and beyond its borders. People who were in the salon reported that before the murder, 2 men on a motorcycle stopped at the entrance. One of them entered and introduced himself as a courier who had brought an expensive gift for Valeria. Dennis Rodriguez, a representative of the Jalisco State Prosecutor's Office, shared additional details. The attacker came asking if the victim was there. "It seems he didn't know her," Rodriguez explained. From this, one can draw the logical conclusion, without rushing to assumptions, that this was someone who was paid. Obviously, this is someone who came with a clear purpose. The Jalisco State Prosecutor's Office defined this crime as a possible femicide, the murder of a woman, because of her gender. Although the prosecutor's office did not officially name any suspects, local media, particularly the Milenio publication, reported about the main suspect. They name a man with the nicknames El Doble R or El Tripa. Velasco is an influential member of the Jalisco New Generation cartel operating in Zapopan. He allegedly dated Valeria for several months. Their relationship, as reported, was accompanied by strong jealousy from Velasco. He often got angry about expensive gifts that Valeria received from her admirers. Mexican media also reported about possible threats to Valeria from her former partner. Some publications published alleged text messages between them, which supposedly showed that the ex-boyfriend threatened the girl because of her ignoring him. It should be noted that the identity of the former partner has not been confirmed by independent sources, and it was not possible to contact him for comments. Valeria's family refused to speak with journalists. The Jalisco State Prosecutor, Salvador Gonzalez de los Santos, held a press conference on May 17, 2025. He stated, "Everyone connected to this girlfriends, relatives, acquaintances, or boyfriends is under investigation or being questioned." He confirmed that Valeria's murder is being investigated as a possible femicide, but did not comment on whether her ex-boyfriend is a suspect. It's worth considering the broader context in which the murder occurred. On the same day, May 14th, just 2 kilometers from Valeria's salon, former Congressman Luis Armando Cordoba Diaz was killed. He was also shot by 2 attackers on a motorcycle. This murder, according to the prosecutor's office, is also being investigated, and it may be linked to Valeria's death. Additionally, less than 2 days before the influencer's death, in the city of Texas-Tepec in Veracruz State, Yesenia Lara Gutierreza, mayoral candidate from the ruling Morena party, was killed during a political motorcade. As in Valeria's case, the politician's murder was captured by cameras, since the event was being live-streamed on Facebook. Valeria Marx's murder shook the entire Mexican society and attracted worldwide attention. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum stated that her government is actively cooperating with local investigators to find the killer. She expressed condolences to Marx's family and urged citizens not to share the video of the girl's death on social networks out of respect for her and her loved ones. Valeria Marquez was buried on May 16th. A bouquet of white roses lay on her coffin. The funeral took place under close police supervision, evidence of the high level of tension and fears of possible incidents. As of today, the investigation into Valeria Marx's murder continues. The Jalisco State Prosecutor's Office continues to gather evidence and question witnesses. Law enforcement officers are carefully studying surveillance camera recordings and analyzing all of Valeria's social media accounts. They are looking for any clues that might help identify the killer. Ricardo Ruiz Velasco, or El Tripa, is a key figure in the investigation of Valeria Marx's murder. Although the Jalisco State Prosecutor's Office has not officially named him as a suspect, the influential Mexican publication Milenio already openly points to him as the main suspect. Information about Velasco is quite fragmented and contradictory, which is typical for persons connected with organized crime in Mexico. According to available data, he was born somewhere in the 1980s in Jalisco State. The exact date and place of birth remain officially unconfirmed. Mexican media call Ruiz Velasco one of the leaders of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, CJNGO, one of the most powerful and cruel criminal organizations in modern Mexico. This cartel controls a significant part of Jalisco State and is engaged in drug trafficking, kidnappings, extortion, and other crimes. According to publications in the Mexican press, Velasco leads an elite unit of the cartel involved in high-profile murders and disappearances of people, including celebrities and influencers. He is described as one of the most brutal criminals in the country, although there are no public official charges against him. Ricardo Ruiz Velasco's criminal past, according to published reports, is quite lengthy. In December 2014, the Excelsior publication reported the arrest of 34-year-old Ricardo Ruiz Velasco, nicknamed El Tripa Seca. He was issued 9 warrants for murders committed in 2013 and 2014 in Jalisco, including the murder of the state's Minister of Tourism, José de Jesus Gallegos Alvarez. In March 2013, the article noted that Velasco participated in a shootout with police in Calvillo on April 24, 2013. It was reported that military, naval, and federal police units delivered him to the airport in Guadalajara, from where he was transported by plane to CEDO, Special Counter-Narcotics Investigative Unit, facilities in Mexico City. However, information about his arrests and imprisonment remains unclear and unconfirmed. He may have been released or avoided lengthy imprisonment due to corruption in law enforcement, a common phenomenon in regions where drug cartels operate. Ruiz Velasco is also linked to the murder of model Daisy Ferrer Arenas, whose body was found in a sewage canal in Guadalajara in April 2022. According to local media, he was involved in the murder of Juan Luis Lagunas, known as El Pirata de Culiacan, the Pirate of Culiacan. Lagunas was shot on December 19, 2017, in a bar in Zapopan after he mocked Nemesio Osegura Cervantes, nicknamed El Mencho, the founder and leader of the Jalisco New Generation Cartel, in a video. Despite this official denial, the name of Ricardo Ruiz Velasco continues to appear in discussions of the case in Mexican media and social networks. Mexican society has widespread distrust of official investigations, especially regarding crimes related to drug cartels, due to high levels of corruption and impunity. The Jalisco State Prosecutor's Office, which is conducting the investigation into Valeria Marx's murder, has repeatedly been accused of connections with cartels, which it denies. According to some sources, up to 90% of crimes in Jalisco State are never registered or properly investigated. It's important to understand that not every murder of a woman automatically becomes a femicide. In Mexico, there are specific legal criteria for such a classification: previous threats or persecution from the killer, sexual violence, demonstrative nature of the crime, particular cruelty, public humiliation of the victim. In Valeria's case, the decisive factor was precisely the public execution of the crime during a live broadcast, a conscious demonstration of power over a woman's life. The Jalisco Prosecutor's Office additionally explained their classification: the nature of the crime, previous threats on social media, the publicity of the murder, as well as the method of execution, professional killing together, form a set of factors that confirm the qualification of this case as femicide. Gemma Clope Santamaria, a sociologist from University College Cork in Ireland who researches gender-based violence in Mexico, explains, femicide reflects the level of saturation, the level of social acceptance of such killings. There is a lot of re-victimization, which allows people to say, let's move on. This is something that won't happen to us. This doesn't happen to good girls. This doesn't happen to decent Mexican women. An important social aspect of femicide is blaming the victim herself for her death, which also happened with Valeria Marks. After her murder, social networks were filled with comments blaming Valeria herself. She was engaged in dubious business. Her ex was a narco. She brought it on herself. Such victim blaming shows how society normalizes violence against women and creates a culture of impunity. Mexico's National Statistics Agency published shocking data in April 2025. From 2001 to 2024, more than 50,000 women were killed in the country. At the same time, such crimes are rarely solved. Less than 5% of cases end in a conviction. In 2023, Mexico ranked 4th among Latin American and Caribbean countries in terms of femicides per capita. Only Honduras, the Dominican Republic, and Brazil are ahead. However, human rights defenders are confident that the real number of femicides is much higher. Many cases are either not registered as femicides or not recorded at all. Particularly alarming is the fact that according to the Jalisco State Prosecutor's Office, Valeria Marks's murder was already the 8th femicide in just the first 2 weeks of May 2025 in the state. This indicates a critical exacerbation of the problem. In recent years, numerous murders of girls and women have caused nationwide outrage and protests, but the situation is not changing. Among high-profile cases, Ingrid Escamilla, a 25-year-old woman who was killed, disfigured, and stabbed with a knife in 2020. 7-year-old Fatima Cecilia Aldraguet, who was kidnapped from school that same year, and whose body was later found wrapped in a plastic bag. 18-year-old Debanhi Escobar, who disappeared near a highway in 2022, and whose body was found in a reservoir 13 days later. Jalisco is among the most dangerous states in Mexico. According to T-Research, since the beginning of Claudia Sheinbaum's presidential term in October 2024, 910 murders have been registered there. This state has been seriously affected by cartel activities. In March 2025, a cartel training center was discovered 50 kilometers from Zapopan, and since 2018, approximately 15,000 people have disappeared in the state. Valeria's murder is not just an individual tragedy. It's a symptom of a deeper social disease that requires comprehensive treatment. Such an atmosphere forms a culture where femicide is perceived as understandable, especially if a woman breaks traditional roles or shows independence. In Mexican culture, the concept of machismo hypermasculinity that glorifies male dominance and aggression is still influential. This phenomenon often justifies violence as a natural manifestation of male power over women. Dr. Maricela Frutos, from the National Autonomous University of Mexico, explains, machismo is not just a cultural trait, but a structural element that supports gender inequality. When women challenge traditional roles, for example through careers in social media, they often become targets of violence as punishment for violating gender norms. At the political level, despite legislative reforms against femicide, Mexico continues to face serious problems implementing these laws. Often, there is a lack of political will, and responsible state institutions remain underfunded and ineffective. According to Nadine Gassman, former head of Mexico's National Institute for Women, even with the historic appointment of the first woman president, the institutional response to gender-based violence remains inadequate. The problem is not in the laws, but in their implementation and the lack of political will for systemic change. The criminal situation in Mexico, especially the influence of drug cartels, creates additional danger for women. Cartels form parallel power structures, act with impunity, and use violence as a tool of control. Women with public profiles, like Valeria Marks, become targets not only because of their gender but also because of their visibility in a society where organized crime has significant influence. Although the problem of femicide is systemic, there are practical tips that can help women increase their safety in conditions of high risk of gender-based violence. How to recognize early signs of danger. A partner controls your social contacts, finances, clothing, or shows excessive jealousy. You are isolated from friends and family. You are verbally abused, humiliated, or threatened. Your partner has sharp mood swings and unpredictable aggression. There have been previous instances of physical violence, even minor ones. Safety measures in everyday life. Develop a personal safety plan with quick ways to exit the home and contacts for emergency assistance. Inform loved ones about your whereabouts and plans, especially in new places. Avoid routine routes and schedules that make your movements predictable. Install safety apps on your smartphone that can quickly send an alarm signal in case of danger. Take care of yourselves from such things. Thank you for being with me throughout this video. May Valeria rest in peace, and may her sacrifice not be in vain. For us, we must fight for justice. Your Detective, Brooks. Working with exceptionally dangerous criminals in the United States sometimes requires unconventional approaches, but deviating from procedural rules can lead to fatal consequences. This case demonstrates how critical it is to follow established protocols to prevent additional casualties during criminal investigations. Heather Kwan's 21st birthday was supposed to fall on Christmas of 2006. On this day, she planned to celebrate with Ryan Waller, her 18-year-old partner, after which the couple was scheduled to visit the young man's parents. Ryan, an attractive guitarist, had recently become a college student where Heather was already studying. Despite his recent move away from his parents, the young man maintained warm relations with his family. After Ryan's former roommate moved out, Heather took the opportunity to move in their boyfriend. The prospect of living together sparked genuine enthusiasm in the young woman. The couple's relationship seemed harmonious, although those around them thought the partners had radically different life principles. Heather, a law student, was characterized by her close friends as a sensitive person, generous with support and help, capable of lifting anyone's spirits in any situation. Ryan demonstrated a stricter character but showed determination regarding his prospects. He chose the same educational institution as his girlfriend. Despite differences in temperament, the relationship appeared balanced. The partners complemented each other, and their character differences didn't create conflict. 1.5 months of living together passed cloudlessly. On December 25, 2006, Ryan's parents prepared a festive dinner, but the couple didn't show up at the agreed time. The young man's family felt anxious because such disorganization was uncharacteristic for the young people, who always kept their commitments. Initially, the relatives decided to wait, beginning the celebration without the late guests. They assumed the couple was so absorbed in conversation that they lost track of time. When the couple's absence dragged on, close family members tried to contact Ryan by mobile phone, but the calls went unanswered. The family's concern grew because the young couple would hardly have neglected the planned family dinner, especially such a significant one combining Heather's birthday with Christmas celebrations. The discomfort was felt so acutely that Ryan's parents postponed the meal. Ryan's sister reported that she had visited her brother's apartment during the day, but no one opened the door. At that moment, it didn't cause concern. She decided the apartment was empty. Now, this circumstance took on an alarming coloration. It turned out that for 2 days, no one had seen the young people. Ryan's mother contacted the local police station with a request to check on the couple. Due to the holiday period, law enforcement was overloaded with higher priority calls. Given the initial assessment of the situation as non-critical, the patrol didn't give the request urgent status, so the family had to wait several hours. By the time the police arrived, Ryan's parents' concern had reached a critical level. The young man's father waited for law enforcement near the residential complex where the couple lived. His anxiety intensified because Ryan was completely ignoring not only phone calls but also knocks on the front door. Heather also showed no reaction. After several unsuccessful attempts to establish contact with the residents, the officers decided to forcibly open the doors. Upon entering the apartment, those present encountered a horrific scene. In the living room, they found Ryan with severe injuries, a black eye, facial swelling, and torn injuries to his nose. The young man remained alive but was in a state of shock, showing limited mobility and difficult articulation. When police asked about Heather's whereabouts, Ryan replied that she was sleeping in another room. However, officers found her without signs of life. The body lay on the couch with a gunshot wound to the head, and multiple signs of beating her face was covered with abrasions, bruises, and wounds. The cause of death was determined to be a gunshot wound. Law enforcement immediately put forward a version implicating Ryan in the incident. The logic was based on the fact that the young man remained the only living person in the room and, as it seemed, did not have severe injuries. The absence of signs of breaking and entering, the young man's uncoordinated movements, and problematic speech strengthened suspicions about his guilt. Police determined that Ryan did not need medical assistance, immediately placed him in a patrol car, and continued to examine the crime scene. From the first minutes of the investigation, the young man became the main suspect. Heather could no longer be saved. Death had occurred approximately a day ago. Ryan demonstrated disorientation and confused thinking from the very beginning. Law enforcement couldn't reconstruct the course of events because the suspect insisted on complete memory loss regarding the incident. Ryan's stay in the house with Heather's body lasted many hours, giving police grounds to assume he attempted to destroy evidence of the crime. Only the timely intervention of the girl's parents, who became concerned and called law enforcement, could have prevented this. After detention, the young man was first placed in a patrol car, postponing transportation to the police station. Don, the detainee's father, later recounted that it took 4 to 5 hours until his son was finally taken to the police station in the early morning for questioning. At the station, all of Ryan's clothes were seized for further laboratory examination, providing him with thin cotton attire instead. The young man was officially informed of his status as a murder suspect. From the first minutes of the investigation, Ryan interacted with Detective Paul Dalton, who paid no attention to the detainee's possible serious injuries. No medical examination was conducted at all. The young man was simply taken to an interrogation room and left alone. The detainee's behavior showed no signs of anxiety or tension, rather confusion and disorientation. He spent the initial minutes in the room with his head on the table, mumbling something indistinctly. The video recording captured a picture as if he was having a dialogue with himself, but it was impossible to make out the words. After approximately 30 minutes of waiting, an officer entered the room, and the interrogation began. The suspect was read his rights, and the officer asked if Ryan understood why he was there.
You know why you're down here, Ryan? You have no idea why you're down here? Okay.
The young man responded negatively, complaining of severe headaches and a desire to sleep. Detective Paul Dalton immediately resorted to psychological pressure. The detainee insisted on his ignorance regarding the events in his own apartment. The video footage clearly shows signs of physical discomfort and exhaustion in Ryan. Formulating sentences was noticeably difficult for him. Demonstrating a psychological defense mechanism, he took a posture, pressing his knees to his chest, resembling a frightened child in a corner. The detainee repeatedly expressed a desire to go home. However, Detective Dalton's plans were completely different to obtain a confession to murder. As the interrogation time extended, anomalies in the suspect's behavior became increasingly noticeable. Ryan demonstrated an inability to name his girlfriend, despite repeated attempts. He couldn't correctly reproduce her last name, and at one point even suggested it was just a nickname.
What is Heather's last name?
The one that lives there right now?
I guess, I don't know. If her name's Heather, what's her last name?
I don't know which name she's trying to use as her last one. She's trying to have a real last as her nickname, so I don't know.
The detainee also mistakenly indicated Heather's age as 16 or 17, although she had turned 21.
How old is Heather?
16 or 17.
Is she a white girl?
Yeah.
When asked about the origin of the bruise under his eye, the interrogated person thought for a long time but found no answer. Eventually, he expressed a supposition about a possible argument with his girlfriend, as a result of which she might have hit him. Probably, such cognitive impairments were a consequence of the injuries received or the general condition of the young man.
What happened to your face?
I don't know.
You told the officer just a few minutes ago that someone hit you. Do you remember who hit you?
I don't know. I think it was Heather.
Why would Heather hit you?
I don't know. It was an accident. I forgot why.
The detective, however, perceived such behavior as an attempt to mislead the investigation. After this episode, Ryan again demonstrated an inability to remember his girlfriend's name. In his story, mentions of an attack by a woman named Christina or Alicia appeared. Given the bizarre nature of the responses, Ryan's health condition caused serious concern. His speech was impaired, and significant memory lapses were observed. The police officer, however, ignored these symptoms. He adhered to the version of a minor facial injury without serious trauma. Paul Dalton didn't attach importance to the strange behavior of the interrogated person, continuing to view him as someone trying to confuse the investigation. The video recording, meanwhile, captured the progressive infantile behavior of Ryan. He cyclically repeated complaints about fatigue and a desire to go home or sleep.
You don't have anybody's phone number? What happened last night?
I don't know.
You don't know?
I really don't. I just want to go to sleep and go to sleep.
It seemed that the young man was not fully aware of the situation. Despite this, he was denied the possibility of rest, and going home was not an option at all. After some time, a new interpretation of events appeared in Ryan's narrative. As if remembering something, he began to describe an invasion by robbers.
Well, these people came over, Richie and his dad, with shoot and arrow, bow and darts. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
They hit me and her with those. That's it. And Heather wasn't there. And Eric wasn't there. It was just me and Heather was there.
You and Heather were there. And then what happened?
And that's it. Richie and his dad tried to break in through the back.
Richie and Dad? His dad?
Mm-hmm.
Who's Richie?
I don't know.
Well, you obviously know him. You know his name by Richie.
He used to live there.
Was he a roommate of yours?
He used to be.
And they hit you and they hit you?
Yeah.
Now it's Richie that hit you, not Heather?
No, Richie and his dad.
Richie and his dad. They hit you?
Yes.
Why?
Because they were trying to get their stuff. I don't know why.
And they had some kind of bow and arrows?
Mm-hmm. They each had 2 revolvers and they didn't let off any shells.
Okay, you just said they had bow and arrows. Now they have revolvers?
That's what I meant. They had revolvers.
They have revolvers?
Yes.
And then what happened?
And then they shot us with those.
They shot both of you?
Yeah.
Where'd they shoot you at?
I got shot in the eye.
You got shot in the eye?
I think so.
With a revolver?
I think. I don't know, man. I don't know.
Unexpectedly, the detainee mentioned the death of his girlfriend, naming a young man named Richie and his father Larry as the culprits.
Well, I want you to tell me the truth. That's all I want.
Richie and his dad came there. And I don't know why. I don't know why, but they put me in sleeping hold, and they put me in sleeping hold with the arrows and shit. I lived through that crap.
According to Ryan, Richie had lived in the apartment for some time before Heather moved in. The suspect claimed that the criminals started shooting after breaking into the apartment. The detainee's version underwent significant transformations. Now he insisted on an attack by Richie. Ryan described his disorientation during the incident, but remembered that the perpetrators came to take some things. Initially, the detainee couldn't remember the attacker's weapons. Later, he described 2 revolvers used by the criminals. One of these revolvers, according to him, became the instrument of Heather's murder. Suddenly, Ryan made a statement that stunned the investigator.
You're saying they shot you in the eye. Okay? They shot you with a revolver in your eye.
Yes. And that's
Is it a BB gun?
No, it was a real gun, man. It was just a
If
revolver.
they shot you in the eye with a revolver, you wouldn't be talking to me right now.
How do you know?
It was most likely you be dead.
That's what I thought too, man. I really don't know.
Okay?
I really don't know, and I just want to go back to sleep and try to go back to bed.
You're not going back to bed. Okay?
This fully explained the abnormal behavior of the young man, who was probably on the verge of life and death throughout the entire interrogation. His childish behavior, amnesia, unclear speech, and constant desire to lie down or leave logically stemmed from the gunshot wound received. It was about a potentially fatal injury, as the bullet remained in his head. No exit wound was found. If Ryan's testimony corresponded to reality, it meant that a foreign object was still in his skull. Internal bleeding could have been fatal for the young man. Such a thought suggested itself. However, Detective Paul Dalton didn't attach importance to the potential danger of the injury. His attention was drawn to a completely different aspect: the young man's repeated changes in testimony during the conversation. This inconsistency in statements seemed to the investigator a direct sign of insincerity and attempts to confuse the investigation. The detective's suspicion grew, prompting him to continue the interrogation despite the clearly deteriorated physical condition of the young suspect. None of the detainee's statements evoked trust in the police officer. The detective's logic was simple. A shot from a revolver in the eye area would inevitably lead to Ryan's death, as happened with Heather. At the same time, the symptoms demonstrated by the detainee unequivocally indicated a traumatic brain injury. Such signs are well known to law enforcement officers thanks to special training that every police employee undergoes. Identifying a traumatic brain injury with these symptoms doesn't require special effort from a specialist. Basic skills in recognizing such injuries are part of standard police training. But Paul Dalton refused to recognize the obvious. He was convinced that Ryan was resorting to tricks, so he insisted on continuing the interrogation, categorically rejecting the possibility of letting the young man go home or allowing him to rest. Instead, the detective only intensified psychological pressure on the victim.
And then she got shot?
Mm-hmm.
What did you do?
Nothing.
Did you call 911? Did you see if she was alive?
She was sleeping still, and that's it. I just let her sleep.
She got shot in the side of the face, and you let her sleep?
Yes.
This does not make sense, Ryan.
I know, I didn't mean to, man. I'm sorry. I didn't know she was passing out. That's because I got shot wrong once, too, and I was gonna pass out.
Okay, this is now, not before.
The interrogation continued even during breakfast. Realizing the criticality of his situation, the young man made one last attempt to convince the detective of the truthfulness of his words. In a desperate gesture, he moved as close as possible to the police officer, looking him straight in the eyes.
Put your feet off my table, please.
My feet hurt, man. I don't know why.
Get them off my table. Let me see your nose. Put your legs down. Put your legs down. Bring your face closer.
Oh, my head hurts.
Okay. Yeah, be right back.
Only at this moment did the investigator finally notice that the young man's eye actually had a gunshot wound. This observation forced him to believe the testimony and make a decision to transport the young man to a medical facility, at least to check his condition. Despite this, the police officer didn't show proper seriousness regarding the situation. He didn't even offer help to the wounded man when exiting the premises. Ryan moved towards the exit on his own, supporting himself with his hand on the wall, with a bullet in his head. Only outside the building did the ambulance medics place him on a stretcher and transport him to the hospital. After hospitalization, Medical personnel quickly established that the delay in providing assistance, caused by law enforcement actions, significantly worsened the patient's condition. Ryan needed urgent medical care 7 or 8 hours ago, immediately after being found in the apartment. The examination revealed a bullet in the skull and internal bleeding, but the most threatening factor was a progressive infection that made immediate surgical intervention impossible. First, it was necessary to overcome the infection, and only then conduct the operation. As a result, the bullet was removed only 3 days after hospitalization. During this period, the victim experienced intense pain and cognitive impairment. The surgical intervention was carried out on December 28th, after which the patient spent more than a month in the hospital for recovery. Doctors couldn't save the victim's left eye, but the most serious consequences were the neurological seizures identified by neurosurgeons during rehabilitation. According to specialists' forecasts, these seizures would accompany Ryan throughout his life. Medical professionals unanimously asserted that timely hospitalization could have significantly reduced the severity of consequences or even completely prevented the long-term complications that the patient now had to live with. Notably, during the examination, doctors also found a fracture of Ryan's jaw, which, according to the victim's testimony, was caused by police actions. The medical personnel involved in the operation and subsequent observation of the patient's rehabilitation repeatedly emphasized that inadequate actions by law enforcement led to significant complications that could have been avoided under adequate response conditions. The detective managed to partially reconstruct the circumstances of the tragic incident with Heather and Ryan. It turned out that the events unfolded 2 days before the arrival of law enforcement. On December 23, 2006, the couple was at home, ordered pizza delivery, spending the day in a normal mode without any peculiarities. However, according to neighbors' testimonies, after the food delivery, a former neighbor named Richie arrived at the apartment. A conflict arose between him and the main character. After a short verbal altercation, the young men parted ways. The story's heroes were decent young people, far from crime, who didn't suffer from mental problems or harmful dependencies, leading a calm and measured life. Richie, on the contrary, was known in criminal circles, repeatedly involved in various offenses, but didn't figure in violent crimes. Police suspected that Richie carried out the attack. His name was mentioned by Ryan during the interrogation. Perhaps this attack was related to revenge. Unfortunately, the hero's memories were still fragmented and incomplete. Ryan helped the investigation reconstruct the picture of the last days of Heather's life, no longer as a suspect, but as a witness and victim of a criminal who miraculously survived a shot to the head. There were no other witnesses to their activity during these days, facilitated by the location of the house. It was located at the end of a dead end, making it an isolated place. Police assumed that the criminal attacked the victims during the period of December 23rd or 24th. Ryan, as before, couldn't fully help reconstruct the entire chain of events because he had memory lapses. He referred to Richie, but the suspect refused to admit guilt. At the scene of the tragedy, no evidence against Richie could be found. All hope remained on the memory of the survivor. The motive seemed unclear. The young people didn't have any expensive valuables for a criminal to want to rob a defenseless couple of students with a weapon. It would take time to reconstruct the events. Neurosurgeons believed that Ryan was still in the process of rehabilitation, even after being discharged from the hospital after a month. Therefore, it was expected that he could still help the investigation by remembering some details later. This indeed happened after some time when the young man's condition slightly improved. The morning of December 24th began normally for the couple. Ryan and Heather woke up in their apartment. According to Ryan's testimony, they were in the kitchen when suddenly there was a knock at the door. Since they weren't expecting any visits, the situation caused surprise. Approaching the door, Ryan found there the former neighbor Richie and his father Larry, both armed. An attempt to close the door proved unsuccessful. The attacker managed to shoot him in the left eye, causing the victim to lose consciousness. After this, the perpetrators headed to the room where Heather was sitting on the couch and shot the girl. Having stolen valuables and a computer from the apartment, the criminals left the crime scene. In his testimony, Ryan pointed out obvious jealousy from the former neighbor. Conflict situations regularly arose between them, particularly over Heather. Eventually, wanting to avoid problematic neighborhood and reunite with the girl, Ryan suggested moving out, which caused strong indignation from Richie. Their farewell took place in an atmosphere of hostility. Several witnesses confirmed that Richie repeatedly visited the previous place of residence, provoking conflicts with Ryan and even resorting to threats, which the victim didn't take seriously. Contrary to expectations, father and son decided to carry out an armed intrusion into the apartment. Both were armed with revolvers. The expert examination conclusion attested to the girl's instantaneous death from a gunshot wound. She was likely eliminated as a potential witness. Ryan proved to be more fortunate the bullet didn't penetrate deep into the brain, causing only a loss of consciousness. The criminals, obviously, considered him dead and left the crime scene. The attackers didn't finish off the victims, instead taking possession of the most accessible valuables and hastily leaving the scene of the tragedy. The entire incident lasted only minutes. Ryan was unconscious for several hours. Upon regaining consciousness, due to his damaged brain, he was unaware of the surrounding situation. Assuming that Heather was just sleeping on the couch, he didn't disturb her, but returned to bed himself and mostly slept, not understanding the real state of affairs. The time intervals proved more traumatic for Ryan than anticipated. For several hours, he lay unconscious next to the deceased girl. After the police arrived, he was held in a patrol car for another 5 hours. The interrogation lasted for hours until the law enforcement representative finally noticed the gunshot wound of the victim and the necessity to provide him with medical assistance. As a result, for almost 7 hours, when minutes were of decisive importance, Ryan remained without emergency assistance. Why Detective Paul Dalton didn't initially record the presence of a gunshot wound in the main suspect remains unclear. Particularly strange is the fact of ignoring the victim's behavior despite his reports of being wounded. It became obvious to everyone who contacted Ryan that his condition was abnormal. According to protocols, in such cases, a police officer is obligated to initiate a medical examination. However, Paul Dalton insisted that, until the end, he considered the suspect's behavior a simulation. Ryan, in his assessment, behaved too suspiciously. He was the only person who saw Heather before her death, and at first glance, there was no one else in the apartment. Considering that such crimes are often associated with the victim's close circle, his status as a suspect seemed logical. It's worth noting that this information became available only after Ryan's discharge from the medical facility. This means that Richie and his father Larry, responsible for the murder, remained at large for at least a month. At the same time, investigators hardly interacted with the victim during his rehabilitation. Miraculously, the criminals didn't commit new attacks, although both had a criminal past. The police refrained from disclosing information about the victim due to fears that the criminals might return to eliminate the only witness capable of ensuring their imprisonment. Eventually, Richie and Larry were detained and taken into custody. Some of the stolen valuables from Ryan's apartment and 2 revolvers were found on them. Ballistic expertise later established that Richie shot Ryan and Larry shot Heather. Richie was charged with murder, breaking and entering theft, aggravated assault, and illegal use of weapons. He received life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. Richie's father was also found guilty. Initially, his wife reported his confession to involvement in the murder of the couple, but later refused to testify in court out of fear. However, Larry's mother didn't back down and testified against him. The prosecution presented exhaustive evidence, and the jury found the accused guilty of first-degree murder, aggravated assault, and robbery. Larry also received life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. After the incident with the attack and interaction with the police, Ryan suffered from seizures, cognitive impairments, and constant headaches. He didn't always act according to the rules. Unfortunately, Ryan didn't see the result of these legal processes. As a result of the attack, he lost his left eye and part of his brain. These injuries significantly affected his further life. He lost the ability for autonomous existence and became dependent on his parents. The young man, who miraculously survived a gunshot wound to the head and pressure from law enforcement, died 10 years after the attack, on January 20th, 2016, as a result of one of the seizures in terrible agony. The fall caused a fatal brain injury. The tragic events attracted significant attention from the media. Despite this, Ryan's parents avoided contact with journalists. Don, the victim's father, gave only one interview, telling about his efforts to achieve justice for his son. He expressed his conviction that Detective Dalton completed what Richie couldn't accomplish, caused his son's death. And so, this devil bore no responsibility. Write your comments about this. It will be interesting to hear your opinion. Heather and Ryan, rest in peace.
Now to that shocking story out of Wisconsin.
The brutal stabbing of a 12-year-old girl.
The girl told police she was with two other girls she knew.
The victim's friend left her to die.
New developments in the Slender Man case. One of the two girls who stabbed a classmate to please a fictional horror character has now been sentenced for the crime.
Police are still investigating. They still have this neighborhood shut down.
We have realized now that we have two missing girls.
The 2014 case known as the Slender Man stabbing captivated the country.
These are the woods where the stabbing actually happened.
A massive search for two girls who were with the victim before she got hurt.
On that fateful day, January 31, 2014, three teenagers, Morgan Geyser, Anise, and Kate Linnerset, out for what seemed like a simple picnic in the serene surroundings of Walker Park, Wisconsin. Little did they know, this outing would take a dark turn that would haunt the community forever. What began as a simple game of hide and seek quickly spiraled into a chilling and deadly encounter. Before we start, write in the comments which city you are from. Maybe the next episode will be about crime in your region. Morgan Geyser was viewed as an oddity by her peers at school. Her fascination with horror stories consumed her every thought.
Morgan did endure a lot of bullying, especially in the 6th grade by the other students.
Her days were consumed by dark corners of the internet, where she meticulously crafted unsettling tales in the pages of her diary. As a result, she found herself utterly alone, with no friends to turn to in her time of need. In a world where camaraderie flourished among the children, she stood apart, an island unto herself. None of the kids sought her out, and she, in turn, made no effort to bridge the chasm of isolation that surrounded her. It was in the 4th grade that Morgan finally stumbled upon a kindred spirit, a best friend who would change everything. A girl with a kind heart, known as Python Elite, found herself unwilling to forge a friendship with Morgan. It was a fateful day when Morgan spotted her, sitting alone in the shadows, a solitary figure in a crowded world. Relief washed over her. Finally, she had found a friend. From that moment on, they became inseparable, weaving their lives together in a bond that would soon reveal its true depths. It was October 2013 when the fateful meeting of the girls took place. In the cold, unforgiving North, a bond was forged of friendship that would intertwine their fates in ways they could never have anticipated. In a seemingly ordinary school, a group of girls found themselves intertwined in a web of secrets and intrigue. Anise appeared to be just an ordinary girl, blending seamlessly into the fabric of everyday life. Her academic performance was commendable. In the dimly lit corridors of the school, she stood out as the teacher's favorite, a beacon of light amidst the shadows of uncertainty. Whispers echoed around her as countless students sought her guidance, hoping to unlock the secrets she held. In a world where friendships can twist and turn like the plots of the very horror stories that captivated some, Python found herself ensnared in a web of conflicting emotions. Her relationship with Nasai was fraught. She viewed her as aggressive and unpleasant, a stark contrast to the bond that blossomed between Morgan and Anissa. Their shared passion for chilling tales drew them closer, while Python remained an outsider, bewildered by their fascination. Concerned for their daughter, her parents urged her to sever ties with the girls, convinced that their obsession was a dark influence. Yet, Python, undeterred by their warnings, chose to follow her own path, oblivious to the shadows that loomed over her friendships. She refused to sever ties with her friends, unaware of the dark fate that loomed ahead. On May 31, 2014, her friends gathered for a picnic in celebration of Morgan's birthday, just a day before she would turn 12. The day took a horrific turn when a cyclist stumbled upon Peyton, bleeding profusely, and immediately called 911. An ambulance rushed her to the hospital, where doctors desperately fought to save her life. Someone had plunged a knife into Peyton 19 times, targeting her arms, legs, and torso. As the police launched their investigation, they were determined to uncover the identity of the person who had inflicted such brutal violence on an innocent girl. On that fateful day, she sent Morgan and her friends to the park, unaware of the chilling discovery that awaited them. There, on the side of the highway, they stumbled upon a website belonging to one of their friends, a haunting reminder of innocence lost. Bloodstains marred their clothes, a stark contrast to their tender age of just 12, much like Peyton herself. The police, recognizing the fragility of the situation, approached the girls with utmost care, striving to shield them from further trauma. Morgan, with an unsettling sweetness, responded to the questions with a calmness that belied the horror surrounding them. When asked about Peyton's condition, she innocently inquired if her best friend was dead. And when the investigator pressed her on why she had harmed Peyton, her response was chillingly matter-of-fact. It was a chilling revelation, one that unfolded like the pages of a dark novel. The crime had been meticulously orchestrated, its roots stretching back 6 months. A group of friends, bound by a sinister pact, had prepared for this moment, yet when the time came, hesitation gripped them. On May 31, the fateful decision was made. The night before, they had gathered at Morgan's house, celebrating her birthday with laughter and games, a facade of normalcy masking the storm brewing beneath. As they donned their outfits for the park, Python's keen eye caught sight of Morgan's backpack, a seemingly innocuous item that held the weight of their grim intentions, filled with clothes and secrets waiting to be unleashed. Granola bars lay nestled in the backpack, a seemingly innocent snack that sparked a question from her. Why the supplies? Morgan shrugged, a hint of mischief in her eyes, suggesting they might just want a bite to eat. The girls set off on a walk, unaware of the weight of the photographs, tucked away images of Anissa's parents and Morgan, reminders of a home that felt uncertain. In a moment of secrecy, Anise slipped a knife into the bag, a silent decision that would echo in the shadows of their adventure. They played on the playground, laughter mingling with whispers as Giannis and Anise exchanged glances, conspiratorial and charged. Anise turned to Peyton, her voice low, inviting her into the booth, a threshold to something unknown. In the dim light of the booth, confusion reigned as she lay there, unable to comprehend the sinister motives swirling around her. Her friends, however, were driven by a chilling curiosity, having read that in the realm of dreams, a victim offers no resistance, making the act of murder disturbingly simple. With closed eyes, the killer's reflection vanishes, shrouding the act in darkness. They cornered Peyton, their intentions clear and cold. Morgan turned to Anise, a chilling reminder of their pact hanging in the air. I thought we agreed that you would do it. In a brutal display of power, they slammed Peyton's head against the unforgiving wall, then stepped out of the booth, leaving her to contemplate the horrifying plan that lay ahead. They ventured into the shadows of Python, a seemingly innocent suggestion to take a walk. The girls stepped outside, surrounded by trees, where Anissa discreetly revealed a hidden Spoda-perfect location to set their plan in motion. Peyton proposed a game of hide and seek, with Morgan assigned the role of seeker. Anissa cunningly instructed Peyton to lie low in the bushes, a deceptive tactic that masked their true intentions. They aimed to ambush Python during the chaos, and as they began to push her down, Anissa's indignation flared, signaling to Morgan the gravity of their scheme. In a chilling turn of events, the scene unfolded on the cold, hard ground. Morgan, with a sinister determination, demonstrated her intentions, grabbing hold of the situation with a grip that was anything but innocent. Anissa, caught in the chaos, found herself knocked down, a victim of the escalating tension. Morgan, relentless in her pursuit, attempted to shoulder the burden alone, insisting that her companions follow her lead. She claimed to possess a knowledge that transcended their understanding, a twisted belief fueled by her obsession with the film Judgment Day, where she thought she could pinpoint the weak spots. But dissent brewed among the girls, each arguing over who would carry out the unthinkable act against Peyton. Morgan, confident in her deception, was convinced that Peyton remained oblivious to their dark deliberations, unaware of the sinister plot that was about to unfold. Amidst the vibrant blooms, a chilling scene unfolded. Anissa, momentarily captivated by the flowers, found herself in a moment that would shatter any illusion of beauty. In a swift, brutal act, she plunged a knife into her victim. Morgan, driven by a frenzy, leaped onto Python, unleashing a flurry of stabs across the body. To Anissa, it was as if the air itself had thickened with the weight of violence. She stood back, a silent observer, as Morgan transformed the scene into a grotesque tableau. Blood splattered, a stark contrast to the delicate petals surrounding them. As they turned to leave, Morgan dripped with crimson, while Python's anguished scream pierced the air. "I trusted you. I hate you." Anissa, cold and calculating, merely advised, "Lie quietly so you won't bleed to death." A chilling reminder of the darkness that had just transpired. In a chilling moment, the wounded girl's desperate scream pierced the air, a haunting call for help that echoed through the darkness. She struggled to rise, but her body betrayed her, collapsing to the ground as panic set in. "I can't breathe. I can't see," she gasped, tears streaming down her face as she pleaded for her friends to save her. Morgan rushed to Peyton, attempting to wipe the blood from her body with leaves, a futile gesture that only deepened the horror of the scene. "Don't touch me," Peyton cried out, her fear palpable. In a cruel twist of fate, Morgan and Anissa feigned a search for help, their hearts cold as they turned away, abandoning her to her fate. Instead of rushing to aid their friend, they made their way to the Walmart, slipping into the restroom to wash away the evidence of their betrayal. With blood still fresh on their hands, they desperately attempted to scrub the crimson stains from her clothes, but the evidence of their actions remained stubbornly intact. During the interrogation, Morgan found herself grappling with a haunting question. Did she truly want to see her parents again? This uncertainty hinted at deeper family issues. Anissa had convinced her that Peyton had to die to appease Slender Man, a sinister figure threatening to annihilate their families if they failed to comply. Under this chilling pressure, Morgan acquiesced. In her confession, she revealed a tumultuous mix of confusion and loyalty, acknowledging that while she understood the gravity of their actions, she was terrified of disappointing her best friend. Alice's quest for a genuine friend was fraught with challenges. In the shadows loomed Slender Man, a tall, faceless figure born from the depths of fiction, yet hauntingly real to some. He had ensnared the minds of Morgan's children, who became entranced by the idea of serving him, desperate to prove his existence. They longed to dwell in his eerie mansion hidden deep within the woods, oblivious to the truth of his fictional nature. They were convinced they had glimpsed him in the flesh. During the interrogation, Anissa's distress was palpable. Tears threatened to spill as she recounted how Morgan, like her, was tormented by voices, compelling them toward a dark fate.
From 6 feet to 14 feet tall. He's a tall guy who constantly wears a suit. He doesn't have a face.
In December 2013, a chilling suggestion emerged from the mind of Morgan, who proposed that Annecy become an accomplice to the sinister figure known as Slender Man. With a nod of agreement, Annecy found herself entwined in a dark pact, as Morgan ominously revealed that they had struck a deal with this malevolent entity.
Who's Slender Man?
He's this tall, faceless man who preys on children.
The stakes were high. They believed that to escape his wrath, they had to eliminate their friend Peyton. The fear of retribution loomed large, threatening not just their lives but those of their families as well. In hushed tones, they plotted their grim course while riding the bus to school, aware that their whispered conversations hinted at a perilous plan. They understood the gravity of their intentions, realizing the darkness that lay ahead. According to Anissa, Morgan concealed a knife in her belt beneath her sweatshirt, a claim that sharply contradicted her friend's assertion that the weapon was stowed away in her backpack. Annis insisted that all the blows were dealt by Morgan alone, claiming she herself refrained from participating due to her moral compass and aversion to violence. Yet, the presence of bloodstains on her clothing cast a shadow of doubt over her narrative, rendering her defense questionable. In this tangled web of shifting blame, the girls seemed to dance around the truth, each trying to evade the weight of their actions. In the shadowy corners of Wisconsin, two girls found themselves drawn together by a dark fascination. They wandered from the familiar aisles of Walmart to the depths of a national park, where whispers of a sinister figure loomed large in their minds. Anissa spoke of Slender Man, a tall, faceless man clad in a suit, haunting their thoughts. Tensions flared as guilt gnawed at them, leading to a confrontation before they turned on Peyton, casting her into the unforgiving embrace of the forest. In that moment, clarity struck. Retreating home was no longer an option, for the weight of their actions threatened to ensnare them in a web of consequences. Anissa's heart ached with regret, a haunting reminder of the choices that had led them down this perilous path. In stark contrast to Morgan, who sat there with an unsettling calmness, devoid of any visible remorse during the interrogation, the chilling details began to unfold. They confessed to a sinister plot, one that involved taking Peyton's life while she lay unsuspecting in her sleep, her eyes closed to the horror that awaited her. Their plan was to silence her, to tape her mouth shut, ensuring that her screams would never escape into the night. But as the weight of their intentions bore down on them, they hesitated, fearing the repercussions that would ensue for their families. Once the police caught wind of the girls' actions and placed them on the wanted list, the facade began to crack, revealing the depths of their chilling resolve. As the sun dipped below the horizon, passing motorists caught sight of two girls in distress, their presence unsettling enough to prompt a call to the police. Just 30 minutes after the python was discovered lurking in the forest, the girls were detained. In their backpack, a chilling assortment awaited: candy bars, a diary filled with haunting entries, photographs of loved ones, and a knife that hinted at darker intentions. Nadezhda, Morgan, and Anissa were now at the center of a growing mystery. Blood was present, raising the stakes of the investigation. As the police delved into their digital lives, they uncovered a series of alarming search queries from Morgan questions that revealed a mind grappling with the weight of a sinister reality: how to hide a murder, the guilt that follows, and the grim possibilities of being caught for such an act, even in self-defense. It was confirmed that a sinister plot was brewing, with the perpetrators meticulously studying their dark intentions. During the investigation, a crucial piece of information emerged. One of the students had confided in the school counselor about overhearing Anissa's chilling conversation. She spoke of a twisted desire to become Slender Man's assistant, a role that demanded a sacrificial life to be taken. Shockingly, the school counselor appeared to dismiss these alarming revelations. When the police tracked him down, he vehemently denied any knowledge of the conversation. Yet, several classmates corroborated the story, revealing that they had been approached with invitations to join in on the malevolent scheme, hints of the impending horror lurking just beneath the surface. There is a moment in this case that surprised even experienced investigators. Write in the comments what surprised you the most. In a chilling twist of fate, a friend's desperate cries for help went unheard, leaving Anissa haunted by an unbearable guilt. She has sensed the darkness creeping into her friend's life, yet when she reached out, her warnings fell on deaf ears. Now, the weight of her silence pressed heavily on her conscience, a torment she could not escape. On Anissa's phone, a haunting farewell message lay hidden in the notes, dated May 28. It read like a final testament. "My last wish to those who know me: don't be upset about my absence, but remember me as I was. I love you and will not harm you. I want everything I have to go to my parents, and best wishes to everyone who knows me personally. Don't miss me." In the school lockers, remnants of her life lingered, a stark reminder of the tragedy that unfolded. In a chilling tale of survival, the scene unfolds with drawings depicting bloody characters, knives, and the haunting figure of Slender Man. Peyton, a girl who defied the odds, refused to succumb to despair even as her friends fled, leaving her to face the darkness alone. Gathering every ounce of strength, she crawled toward the road, desperate for help. It was there, amidst her agony, that a cyclist discovered her. Unable to utter a word due to the excruciating pain, she could only nod, teetering on the brink of unconsciousness. The girl bore life-threatening injuries, one perilously close to her heart. Betrayed, but not broken, she was whisked away to intensive care, where doctors fought valiantly to save her life. In the aftermath of the brutal attack, she slowly began to regain her senses, embarking on a long and arduous journey of mental and physical recovery. Yet, the shadows of that fateful day lingered, haunting her with nightmares of her friends, leaving her in a state of perpetual fear. She recounted the chilling moment when Morgan, just before plunging the knife, expressed her sorrow, claiming it was the only way to save her from the sinister figure of Slender Man, who was said to be stalking their parents. Both Morgan and Anise were aware of their daughter's fascination with Slender Man and other fictional horrors from a website, yet they failed to recognize the dark path it would lead them down. They remained oblivious to the chilling truth. The girls were gripped by fear and an unsettling fascination with him, which paralyzed their ability to act. Morgan, a girl shrouded in mystery, was described by teachers as strange and uncommunicative, a true loner in a sea of social interaction. Other students kept their distance, wary of her peculiarities. Then came the day when Morgan, in a frenzy, darted through the halls, claiming that Snape from Harry Potter was stalking her. Dismissed as mere fantasy, her cries fell on deaf ears. But the unsettling image of her in the restroom, fingers smeared with blood, sent shivers down the spines of those who witnessed it. The teacher, alarmed, promptly reported the incident, unaware of the darkness that loomed just beneath the surface. Morgan's mother dismissed the concerns, attributing her daughter's behavior to an overindulgence in frightening tales. The teacher, sensing something amiss, urged Morgan to steer clear of such stories, but the girl paid no heed. It wasn't long before she brought a hammer to school, a chilling detail that didn't go unnoticed when it tumbled from her locker. Summoned to the principal's office, Morgan claimed she needed the hammer for self-defense. Observing her peculiar behavior, the principal noted that Morgan often spoke to herself. Her classmates too witnessed her wandering the halls with an unsettling air. In the pages of her diary, she penned her darkest thoughts, weaving a narrative that sent shivers down the spines of those who dared to read it. Death loomed large in her writings, a specter that haunted her peers and drew the attention of her teacher, who felt compelled to inform her mother. Yet, the gravity of Morgan's words seemed lost on her family. Her mother dismissed the concerns, recalling how Morgan had always been emotionally detached. Even as a child, she showed no remorse, her reaction to the tragic fate of Bambi's mother chillingly indifferent, merely urging the fawn to run. At just 12 years old, Morgan Geyser found herself ensnared in a web of legal troubles, charged with attempted first-degree murder. In the courtroom, her friend Anissa would later reveal the chilling truth, stating that she had not acted alone. Take a moment to consider the chilling reality of the situation. It appears that she and Morgan were entangled in a sinister game, one that spiraled out of control. Initially, she dismissed the gravity of their actions, but everything changed when Morgan plunged a knife into Peyton's body. She claimed her intentions were never to inflict harm. Rather, she sought to validate the existence of a dark figure. Fear gripped them, a terror that if they failed to execute their plan, Slender Man would come for them. In a moment of desperation, they crossed an unforgivable line. Yet, in the aftermath, the weight of their actions bore down on them, and Morgan was left grappling with a diagnosis that would haunt her forever. In a chilling tale of inherited torment, it was revealed that her father had battled schizophrenia, a shadow that loomed over Morgan's life. When the time came for her to face the consequences of her actions, she pleaded guilty, yet the court deemed her not guilty by reason of mental illness. The verdict led to a staggering 40 years of confinement in a psychiatric hospital, a fate that would see her grappling with her demons. Meanwhile, Anissa, too, found herself ensnared in the web of a trial, where she admitted to complicity in attempted premeditated murder. However, the jury, swayed by her claims of a fractured reality, ruled her not guilty due to mental illness. Her sentence? A lengthy 25 years of treatment, a grim reminder of the blurred lines between fantasy and reality. In the summer of 2021, a pivotal moment unfolded when the court granted a petition not for early release, but for a new chapter in a young life. Doctors had determined that she no longer posed a threat to herself or society. On September 13, 2021, the 19-year-old emerged from the confines of the psychiatric hospital, stepping back into the world to live with her parents. With aspirations to continue her studies and secure a part-time job, her future seemed bright. Yet, shadows lingered. Anissa remained under constant surveillance, her movements tracked by GPS, her online activity monitored to prevent her from wandering into the dark corners of horror stories. Alcohol and other substances were strictly off limits, a reminder of the delicate balance she must maintain in her newfound freedom. In a world where shadows linger and connections fade, Peyton, now 19, stands at a crossroads. Having graduated high school, she embarks on a new journey into the medical faculty at university. Yet, the echoes of solitude surround her. Friendships have slipped through her fingers like sand. Amidst this isolation, a flicker of hope emerges. She is dating a guy, a glimmer of companionship in her otherwise quiet life. This story is a grim reminder of how thin the line between reality and illusion can be, especially in the minds of young people exposed to mental illness and the influence of the internet. It tells us to be attentive to each other, not to leave unanswered the warning signs, and, most importantly, not to be afraid to ask for help. Even one honest conversation can save a life.
A year and a half after murdering a young woman in Bend, the killer admits to the murder.
This morning, 32-year-old Edwin Lara pleaded guilty to aggravated murder and the death of 23-year-old Kaylee Sawyer.
She has four younger brothers who desperately want their big sister home.
Today, we don't celebrate the end of this tragedy because it's not over for Kaylee's family. Today is the 548th day
Kelly Saver entered the world on March 2, 1993, in the quaint town of Bend, Oregon. At just 23 years old, she radiated brightness and cheer, embracing every moment with a smile. In this serene corner of the city, she shared an apartment with Cameron Ramhofer, a relationship that seemed picture perfect. Cameron had won over Kelly's parents, solidifying their bond. Initially, Kelly aspired to be a photographer, showcasing her talent and ambition. She had grand dreams for her future, full of promise and potential. But then, she landed a job as an administrator at a dental clinic where she showcased her remarkable skills. Before watching, we would like to know your opinion. What crimes scare you the most? Write in the comments. Kelly had a unique ability to connect with each patient, soothing the fears of those who dreaded the dentist's chair. As she worked alongside the doctors, she realized her own aspirations. She wanted to become a dentist, feeling a deep sense of calling. People placed their trust in her, unafraid to seek treatment for their teeth. On that fateful Saturday evening, July 23, 2016, at around 8 o'clock, Kelly Sir and a friend ventured to a bar in the city center, unaware of the events that would soon unfold. It was a night filled with laughter and celebration, a bachelorette party where colleagues gathered to honor one of their own. The atmosphere was electric as they danced, raised their glasses, and shared in the joy of the occasion. Most of the attendees were middle-aged, and as the clock struck 10:30 p.m., the festivities began to wind down, with guests trickling out one by one. But not Kelly and her group of younger friends. They craved more excitement and decided to venture to another bar. There, the night took a turn as they indulged in more drinks and danced with abandon. Amidst the revelry, a stranger began to flirt with Kelly, an encounter that did not go unnoticed. Cameron's friend, ever vigilant, sent a message to him, alerting him that Kelly was at the bar, mingling with someone else. It was past midnight when the tension began to rise. A guy named Cameron, fueled by anger and perhaps a bit of alcohol, found himself in a precarious situation. His girlfriend, Kaylee, had called him, her voice laced with the fatigue of a long night and the need for comfort. But as he arrived to pick her up from a restaurant where she was surrounded by friends, the atmosphere shifted. Kaylee, having indulged in too many drinks, was caught up in conversation with another man, igniting a spark of jealousy in Cameron. The ride home was fraught with conflict, their words sharp and cutting. By the time they reached their apartment, the air was thick with dissatisfaction. Cameron stormed out of the car, leaving Kaylee to grapple with the aftermath of their fight, her footsteps trailing behind him, unwilling to let the night end in silence. She lingered in the car, trying to gather her thoughts, to cool the tempest brewing inside her. Meanwhile, the man awaited her return in the apartment, but 10 minutes ticked by with no sign of her. Just then, Cameron's phone buzzed with a message from Kelly. Her words dripped with regret as she apologized for her earlier outburst and bid him farewell. Confusion washed over him as he raced back to the car, only to find the front passenger door ajar and the vehicle deserted. Panic set in as he dialed her number, and her voice came through, calm yet distant, explaining she needed to take a walk to clear her head. She cautioned him that her phone was about to die. As the night deepened, the battery on his phone dwindled and the connection faded into silence. Cameron, gripped by a sense of urgency, made the assumption that Kelly had sought refuge at her friend's house, a mere 6 kilometers from campus. He slid behind the wheel, the engine humming softly as he drove, his eyes scanning the darkened road for any sign of her. But the shadows held no answers, and the girl remained elusive. The night stretched on, and despite his desperate search, she was nowhere to be found. The phone calls went unanswered, and his girlfriend's voice echoed in his mind, claiming she hadn't seen Kelly. Doubt crept in as Cameron considered the possibility that Kelly had simply left with friends, destined to return by morning, unaware of the growing storm of worry that surrounded her. After sobering up, he returned to the apartment and crawled into bed. But when morning broke, he noticed something was amiss. No phone, just a cascade of unanswered voicemails. A chill crept over him as he realized this was not her typical behavior. Panic set in as he reached out to her family, inquiring if they had any idea of Kelly's whereabouts. Her parents, equally concerned, revealed that she hadn't called them either, but they held on to the hope that she might have simply spent the night with friends and would soon return. Desperation mounted as Cameron began dialing every friend and colleague he could think of, but each call only deepened the mystery. No one had seen or heard from her. They were left in a growing void of uncertainty. In a moment of desperation, he reached out to the police, reporting Kelly's unsettling disappearance. They arrived at Cameron's door, listening intently to his account, but their response was lackluster. After all, she was just 23, a young woman capable of vanishing without a trace, or so they thought. With no sense of urgency, they dismissed his concerns, convinced she would return on her own. But as the hours turned into a day, and still no sign of Kelly, the reality began to sink in. She was known for her unwavering dedication to her job, never one to miss a day without reason. It became painfully clear something sinister had befallen her. Only then did the police finally shift gears, launching a search for the missing girl. In a tale that twists and turns like a dark alley, everything felt off-kilter. Jealousy hung in the air as he watched her leave with another man in a car, a gnawing suspicion creeping into his mind. Then, as if scripted by fate, Kelly's phone died, plunging the investigation into deeper shadows. Cameron, the last person to capture her on video, found himself ensnared in a web of intrigue, his narrative raising more questions than answers. When summoned for questioning, he recounted his story with unwavering consistency, eager to assist the authorities. He opened the doors to his apartment and car without hesitation, even joining the frantic search for the missing girl. Yet, despite his cooperation, the specter of doubt loomed large over him as he navigated the treacherous waters of suspicion and scrutiny. In a twist of fate, the lie detector test cleared him, leading to the dropping of all charges. Yet, the police couldn't shake the feeling that the man who had flirted with her might hold the key to her disappearance. They set out to uncover his identity, scouring for witnesses who might have seen their interaction, perhaps a fleeting exchange of phone numbers, or a whispered agreement to meet that fateful night. The investigators eventually tracked down this elusive figure, only to find him inebriated, his memory clouded by the haze of alcohol. He stumbled through his recollections, unable to recall her name or number, adamantly claiming he had never crossed paths with her again. The mystery deepened, leaving more questions than answers in its wake. The police canvassed the homes of all her friends and relatives, searching for any trace of her whereabouts. What they discovered was chilling. Kelly's car, abandoned, and left with a friend from Perry's bachelorette party. It was clear she hadn't returned to retrieve it, raising the unsettling possibility that she had vanished without a trace. Her phone, too, was untraceable, adding to the mystery. That night, the investigators followed the likely route she might have taken, desperately seeking any clue signs of a struggle, blood, or footage from surveillance cameras. But the night yielded nothing, leaving Cameron and the others in a haunting silence, grappling with the unknown. In a desperate bid to find their missing daughter, parents and friends plastered the city with leaflets bearing her photo, flooding social media with pleas for information. Then, in a twist that would change everything, a rookie police officer named Isabel Lara stepped into the station with a chilling revelation. Her husband, Edwin Lara, a college security guard, had been acting strangely after his night shift on Sunday. He returned home late, his demeanor unsettling, as if a heavy burden weighed on him. Finally, the truth spilled from his lips in that fateful night. Something sinister had unfolded. On that fateful Sunday, July 24, a tragic incident unfolded. A young girl, walking innocently along the roadside, met a horrifying fate when she was struck by a work vehicle. The driver, claiming she was intoxicated and stumbled into the path of his car, insisted he had no time to react. But the chilling details didn't end there. In a moment of panic, he confided to his wife that he had hidden her body, her belongings tucked away in the barn of their home. When the police arrived at Edwin Lara's residence, they found he had already vanished. Yet, their search yielded unsettling discovery as a woman's handbag, filled with an assortment of small items and cosmetics, hinted at a darker narrative lurking beneath the surface. In a chilling scene, shoes lay abandoned, strands of light hair clung to the ground, and a large bloody stone caught the eye of investigators. The sight was shocking, especially as the bloodied items hinted at a darker truth. It became evident that these belonged to a girl, and the circumstances surrounding their discovery were anything but accidental. Edwin, in a hushed tone to his wife, revealed his suspicions. The stone was likely the weapon used to inflict harm, perhaps even to take a life. Yet, the girl's body remained elusive, vanishing without a trace. The police scoured the house and its surroundings meticulously, but their efforts yielded nothing further. It seemed clear that Edwin had not merely fled. He had concealed the evidence, likely transporting the body away in his vehicle. In a chilling twist, the car was declared wanted, but Isabel's silence spoke volumes. Fear gripped her heart, compelling her to shield her husband from the authorities. She feigned support, all the while knowing the danger he posed. Days slipped by as she bided her time, and when she finally mustered the courage to approach the police, he had vanished into the night. The clock was ticking, and with each passing moment, the chances of finding him dwindled. When the investigators pressed her for leads, Isabel revealed a haunting possibility his parents resided in Los Angeles, a city that could easily swallow him whole. He sought refuge, slipping away from their grasp as the police made their way to Los Angeles, California, neighboring state that held secrets of its own. Along the route, they stumbled upon his abandoned car, a vessel of mystery filled with strange notes, cryptic numbers, and heartfelt apologies for his actions. The detectives delved into the contents, but the clues led them nowhere. The car bore no signs of an accident, and with each passing moment, the realization dawned upon them. They were on the right trail. Twin was headed to his parents, while Edwin's phone remained untraceable. And in the shadows, Twin continued his dark descent into chaos. After his escape, he committed unspeakable acts, abducting yet another young victim, a 19-year-old girl named Andre M.S. He observed her as she finished her shift at the store, slipping into her car with an air of routine. Her attention was absorbed by her phone, oblivious to the world around her. In the shadows, he moved silently, opening the passenger door and sliding into the seat beside her. The atmosphere shifted as he brandished a gun, the cold metal glinting ominously in the dim light. Fear washed over her as he issued his chilling demand: take him to California. The tension thickened, a moment suspended in dread. Andrea's heart raced as she listened to his chilling confession. He recounted the moment he revealed his dark intentions regarding Kelly, even producing a photo of her that sent shivers down her spine. The headlines screamed of his notoriety. branding him a wanted kidnapper. He spun a tale of misfortune, claiming his car had broken down while he plotted his escape from the city, his eyes scanning for the next unsuspecting victim to whisk away to Los Angeles. He chillingly admitted to contemplating the abduction of a pregnant woman, his mind swirling with horrific possibilities. But fate had other plans. He found no pregnant women in sight. Instead, his gaze fell upon her, alone in the dimly lit parking lot, and in that moment, he made his decision. Andrea was the ideal choice for the role of the girl, embodying a chilling reality that was both terrifying and unsettling to hear. She fought to maintain her composure, battling the instinct to panic in a desperate bid for survival. Hours later, Edwin, her captor, deemed her driving too reckless, a potential beacon for law enforcement. With a cold command, he ordered her to pull over and switch to the passenger seat. Handcuffed to the car, she felt the weight of her predicament settle in as he took the wheel. In that moment, she understood that her only chance lay in earning his trust, and she voiced her understanding, a calculated move in a deadly game of survival. Her car was leaking oil, a fact that loomed ominously over their journey. It was clear they wouldn't make it to Los Angeles in such a state. The girl suggested he take another car, hoping to escape his grasp, but that plan quickly unraveled. They stopped at a gas station and a diner, where he issued a chilling command. She was to remain silent, to avoid conversation with anyone, or face dire consequences. "I will kill you, and anyone you speak to," he warned. Andrea complied, her silence a desperate act of survival. She tried to convey her distress through her demeanor, but the world around them remained oblivious to the dark reality unfolding in their midst. As night fell, the tension thickened in the air. Edwin, with sinister intentions, had set the stage for a horrific act, but the girl, sharp and perceptive, sensed the danger lurking in the shadows. It was then that Andrea, a beacon of hope, devised a clever plan. With a subtle flick, she activated the alarm on her phone, just as they crossed the threshold into the room. The moment Edwin began his relentless pursuit, the shrill sound pierced the silence. Panic gripped him. Paranoia took hold as he feared the long arm of the law was closing in. He was convinced he was being watched. Yet, Andrea, quick on her feet, spun a tale of a mere notification or reminder for medication. Curiosity sparked in Edwin as he inquired about her supposed ailment, unaware of the trap that was being set. She revealed her secret, a venereal disease. And just like that, Edwin was gone, leaving her in silence. They lay on opposite sides of the bed, the tension palpable. The kidnapper had done his work. Chains and handcuffs bound Edwin, who tossed and turned, unable to find solace in sleep. Panic gripped him, a relentless fear that the police were closing in. Meanwhile, Andrea lay still, praying for his slumber, for a chance to escape. But the moment was fleeting. Edwin bolted from the bed, grabbing a disposable phone, his voice rising in Spanish, words that slipped past her understanding, a frantic call for help in the dark of their confinement. Andrea felt the urgency in the air as they sped away, the weight of their situation pressing down on her. The car's oil began to boil, a sign of impending disaster, and Link's anger flared. He turned to his hostage, his voice sharp with frustration, insisting they needed to find another vehicle. In that moment, all of Andrea's hopes for a release shattered. She had clung to the idea that he might leave her behind with the car, but the twin had other plans. As they drove, they spotted a model nearby, surrounded by several cars, and pulled up. The door to one of the rooms stood ajar, revealing an elderly man busily loading his belongings, oblivious to the storm brewing just outside. From the dimly lit room, he stepped into the open car, a decision that would seal their fate. The kidnapper, gun in hand, loomed over the elderly man, demanding the keys with a menacing glare. Panic surged as the man cried out for help, but before he could finish, a shot rang out, echoing through the air. In that moment of chaos, the kidnapper seized his hostage and sprinted toward the gas station, the sound of sirens growing closer. Miraculously, the elderly man survived, finding refuge at the gas station where fortune smiled upon him. A car with open doors awaited. They jumped in and sped away, but not without the looming threat of 3 pursuing vehicles hot on their trail. In a chilling turn of events, three children found themselves in a harrowing situation. Behind the wheel was a 17-year-old, a fresh license holder, navigating the roads with a mix of excitement and trepidation. But the thrill of the journey was abruptly shattered when Edwin, armed and menacing, threatened the young driver, compelling him to flee from a gas station. As the story unfolded, it revealed that this car was not just any vehicle. It belonged to a family traveling from Canada to the USA, caught in a nightmare they never saw coming. As the parents stepped out of the gas station, a chilling realization struck them: their car, with their children inside, had vanished into thin air. Panic surged through their veins as they dialed the police, desperation clawing at their throats. He refrained from commanding the children to toss their phones out the window, a move designed to evade tracking. Instead, he chillingly declared himself a dangerous criminal, capable of ending their lives at any moment. The children huddled together, fear etched on their faces, the older brother gripping the steering wheel with trembling hands. In that tense moment, the teenager, with a calm demeanor, managed to persuade them to release their hold, all because of the allure of the wine that lingered in the air. He acknowledged that the children posed a threat to his carefully laid plans, recognizing that they would become vulnerable targets for the police to track down, and he accepted this grim reality. He abandoned the children on the roadside, their small figures fading into the distance as he sped away with Andrea and the twins, leaving behind a scene that would haunt them all. A palpable sense of panic gripped the air. In a twist of fate, one child clung to his phone, a lifeline in the chaos. As the others dialed their parents, a sense of urgency filled the air. Soon, the parents arrived, accompanied by the police, ready to rescue the frightened children from their harrowing ordeal. The children trembled in fear as they recounted their harrowing tale, claiming they had fallen victim to a sinister criminal who had abducted them. Unbeknownst to them,
Hi everybody, I just want to say that I apologize for everything I've done. Most likely I'm going to get caught, and sorry about that girl.
the girl was not just a mere bystander. She was his captive, ensnared in a web of darkness. The children recounted chilling tales of his confession to the murders. The police pursued the kidnapper's vehicle, unaware of the chilling truth that lay ahead. In a moment of desperation, Edwin found himself on the run, fully aware of the gravity of his choices. Stealing a car with the kids was a decision he would soon regret as the sirens of justice drew closer. With the weight of his actions heavy on his conscience, he turned to his phone, capturing a video confession as they sped toward California. In it, he expressed remorse for the crimes that had led them to this perilous path, urging the girl to share their story with the world. It was on her Facebook, a chilling subtitle, "Killers on the Loose." The tension escalated as he grew increasingly paranoid, claiming he heard helicopters closing in. But Andrea, trapped in the car with him, saw and heard nothing but the pounding of her own heart. She prayed silently, desperate for him to release her from this nightmare, and pressed the gas pedal harder, the speedometer climbing higher. I thought for sure a police car would catch up with them soon. They sped past a patrol car in hot pursuit, and before long, Edwin was apprehended. Andrea, in disbelief at her newfound freedom, stepped out of the car only to find herself in handcuffs as well. The nightmare was far from over. They were both ensnared in the web of chaos and fear. Both were taken to the station, where the police initially suspected her of being his accomplice. They searched her thoroughly, interrogating the girl who had endured the unimaginable horror alongside him. She had to prove her innocence despite the fact that he had kidnapped her and held her hostage. Andre had no desire to be with him. She had not gone of her own free will. After a harrowing 18 hours, she was finally released. A police officer from the town of Band, who had been searching for him due to Kelly's disappearance, learned of his arrest and made his way to the police station. In the heart of California, the interrogation unfolded like a chilling tale. Edwin, under the weight of scrutiny, recounted a bizarre twist of fate claiming she was still alive, perhaps due to a chance encounter with a squirrel or a car. He confessed to smashing her head with a rock, a desperate act to silence her screams. But the police, armed with evidence, found no signs of an accident on the vehicle. In a sudden shift, Edwin altered his narrative, suggesting he had merely intended to pick her up. He labeled her a girl of easy virtue, Yet this assertion crumbled under the reality of the area, where no such girls roamed amidst the drunken students staggering home. The layers of his story peeled back, revealing a web of contradictions that only deepened the mystery. After parties were a routine part of campus life, and students often found themselves being escorted home by campus police. On the night of Kelly's disappearance, one officer recounted a chilling tale that seemed all too plausible. He was patrolling the college area in his work vehicle, ensuring order, when he spotted a young woman clearly intoxicated and struggling to walk. He stopped, offering her a ride. Kelly, seeing the uniform of a security guard, believed she was safe and accepted his offer. Little did she know that trust would lead her into a nightmare as he turned from protector to predator. He strangled her, then delivered fatal blows to her head with a rock, a chilling act that he had long contemplated. Inspired by the infamous serial killers that haunted the pages of crime lore, he spotted Kelly alone on the road that fateful night and knew she would be his first victim. His dark ambitions didn't end there. He had been plotting other murders simultaneously. Initially, he was reluctant to reveal the location of his heinous act, but eventually he marked the spot on a map where he discarded her body. When the police discovered her remains, they were mutilated beyond recognition, a haunting testament to the brutality that unfolded in Kyiv. The cause of death was a head injury inflicted by a blunt object, leading to charges of murder against Kelly. The accusations didn't stop there. They included attempted murder of a man, rape of Kelly, kidnapping of Andrea, and carjacking. Transported to Oregon, he faced the looming specter of the death penalty. During the trial, he claimed he requested to call his lawyer, only to have that request denied. Yet, the police had been waiting, offering him the chance to contact legal counsel. He insisted that his lawyer was already present, implying he would represent himself, but later he retracted that statement, leaving the courtroom in a tense silence. In a chilling turn of events, the confession of murder made during the interrogation was cast aside, leaving the prosecution with the daunting task of proving that it was Edwin who had taken the life of Kay. Despite the weight of the accusation, a trove of evidence loomed large. In the shadows of his barn, incriminating traces of his DNA were discovered, alongside the haunting words of his wife, Andrea, who recounted the chilling details of Kelly's murder. The prosecution, relentless in their pursuit of justice, aimed for nothing less than a life sentence without the possibility of parole for Edwin. Yet, in a twist of fate, Edwin struck a deal with the prosecution, confessing to the murder and attempted crimes that would forever alter the course of his life. In a chilling tale of betrayal and violence, Edwin Lara was convicted of murder and kidnapping, yet he steadfastly refused to admit to the heinous act of rape, even when faced with the prospect of a life sentence. The court's decision was swift, handing down 2 life sentences without the possibility of parole. Meanwhile, the family of Kelly, the victim, sought justice through a lawsuit against the college, alleging negligence on the part of their security guard. They claimed the institution failed to properly vet Edwin, neglecting to inquire about his psychological evaluations and other critical information during the hiring process. This oversight allowed him access to a weapon, handcuffs, and a bulletproof vest tools he would ultimately use to commit his crimes. The lawsuit concluded with a settlement of $2 million, a grim reminder of the tragic events that unfolded. In the aftermath of this chilling incident, a thorough background check was initiated at Glow College for all security personnel. Psychological evaluations were implemented, and the security policy underwent a rigorous tightening, ensuring that such a breach of safety would never happen again. Edwin Lara was behind bars, but the trace of his horror lingered on the faces of Andrea and those who once stood by her. She emerged from this captivity not as she was before, but alive, thanks to her intelligence, coolness, and endless instinct for survival. The story ended as nightmares end. Suddenly, in the half-light of sirens, with her breath half in her chest, and only silence remained, in which the main thing is heard. Not everyone can be trusted, and it is possible to save oneself even when there is no hope anymore.
Tomorrow marks 1 week since 18-year-old Natalie Holloway.
You killed Natalie Holloway?
No.
Did you harm Natalie Holloway?
No.
In the Natalie Holloway case, a judge in Aruba is releasing prime suspect Joran Vandersloot from jail.
And pictures of the missing American teen started making news.
On May 30, 2010, on that fateful day, 21-year-old Stephanie Flores decided to participate in a poker tournament held at the Atlantic City Casino in Lima, Peru. This decision became the beginning of a tragic story that would soon shock everyone. She was a genuine gambling enthusiast, and just a couple of days before this, she had managed to win 10-0. In her eyes, the chances of winning looked very promising. Before we begin, write in the comments what city you're from. Perhaps the next episode will be about a crime in your region. Before heading to this mysterious place, she quietly informed her father that she would spend just a couple of days there before returning home. But at that moment, no one could predict that her words would be the last he would hear. After this trip, she disappeared and no one saw her again. Stephanie Flores shared her life with her father. This family was widely known in society. Their names were on everyone's lips. Her father, Ricardo Flores, was not just a race car driver, but also a candidate for the presidency of Peru, which added intrigue to his life and the fate of his family. In this family, where an atmosphere of children's laughter and mischief reigned, 5 children grew up, 4 boys, full of energy and mischief, and 1 girl named Stephanie, who seemed to be the only light amid the stormy sea of boyish pranks. Love prevailed in the family, but their only daughter, the youngest of all, stood out especially. Parents and older siblings surrounded her with care, as if she were their most valuable treasure, which ultimately led to unexpected consequences. Despite their high status and impressive wealth, each family member remained a simple and kind person, enjoying the ordinariness of their life. But behind this idyll lurked secrets that could shock even the most steadfast observers. The 4 sons, each with their secret plans, immersed themselves in the world of event organization. Stephanie was in her 3rd year at the University of Lima, immersed in studying business administration, and at the same time working, earning a living alongside her brothers. Stephanie, a true thrill seeker, immersed herself in the world of gambling, where she managed to earn impressive sums. But behind this brilliant side lurked dark secrets and risks that could turn into catastrophe. When the girl didn't return home after the poker tournament, anxiety gripped her father, Ricardo. He knew that in the world of gambling, not everything was as harmless as it seemed, and his heart tightened with a premonition of trouble. It was strange because Stephanie was always responsible and never disappeared without a trace. Her behavior caused alarm, like a harbinger of something ominous. The man, overcome with anxiety, dialed his son's numbers, begging them for help in this critical moment. The brothers found themselves in despair when their attempts to call Stephanie were unsuccessful. At that moment, they began calling all the missing persons acquaintances, but none of them could give even a clue about where the girl might be. They searched every corner of the district, vainly and unsuccessfully looking for their sister, who seemed to have vanished into thin air. At the moment when the father dialed the police number, anxiety hung in the air. Stephanie had disappeared without a trace. The police headed to that very hotel where fates were being played out at poker tables and began questioning the establishment's employees, trying to unravel the tangle of events that had occurred on that ominous night. They had no idea where one of the participants had disappeared to. The detectives, immersed in an atmosphere of mystery, requested recordings from the hotel's surveillance cameras and began carefully studying them, hoping to reveal the secrets hidden behind the frames. After studying the recordings from surveillance cameras installed in the corridor next to the conference hall where the tournament was held, they stumbled upon a mysterious moment. Around 3 o'clock in the morning, on May 30, a girl entered the room. She approached the table and sat down next to a young man in light-colored clothes, who was already in his seat. What happened on that night when everything seemed normal? In the shadow of the tournament, where excitement and tension intertwined, they exchanged pleasantries, and then, under the cover of night, left this place together when the clock struck 5 in the morning. Later, hotel workers began to recall seeing them together, and this became just the beginning of a convoluted story, full of riddles and secrets. The guy looked like a model of politeness and friendliness, but behind this mask, something more could be hidden. One of the employees even noticed that this mysterious stranger resembled actor Brad Pitt, as if he had stepped off the screen into real life. That's how he remained in memory. But the investigators faced a puzzle. Where did this couple go after the tournament? When investigators began delving into the world of video recordings, they stumbled upon a key to solving this mystery. At 5:16 a.m., as if from the shadows, Stephanie and that mysterious stranger entered room 309. What happened on that ominous night? After some time, he returned, holding 2 cups of coffee and fresh pastries in his hands, as if knowing that this would help ease the tension in the air. 3 hours and 20 minutes. That's how much time had passed since they first crossed the threshold of the hotel room. The guy, with a backpack on his shoulders, left this place and never returned. What happened during this time? The mystery, shrouded in shadow, remained unanswered. After his departure, he gave strict orders to the hotel staff. Do not disturb the girl in the room. And they, as if under hypnosis, did not dare to break the silence until the police arrived. The detectives, gathering their thoughts, decided it was time to look into the room and find out if everything was all right with the girl. Tension hung in the air, and each step brought them closer to the solution. What was hidden behind the closed door? But as soon as they opened the door of the room, all their hopes collapsed into the abyss. A sinister scene opened before the police, full of grim details that made hearts stop in horror. Stephanie Flores was found lifeless in the hotel room. She was in a terrible state, literally beaten to death, her body covered in blood. In the gloomy room where the drama unfolded, investigators discovered a tennis racket. This seemingly harmless object now became key evidence in the case that shocked everyone. They were certain it served as the murder weapon. The girl had a broken neck, and blood, like a red river, flowed from the left side of her head, from her ear and nose, leaving behind a sinister testimony to the tragedy. Signs of strangulation were found on the body. Among the many injuries, one particularly stood out: a blunt trauma to the back of the head and lower part of the neck, leaving its mark in this grim story. The blow from a blunt object led to bleeding in the brain and became the fatal cause of death, as later confirmed by the medical examiner. Stephanie, fully clothed, silently lay on her back, as if frozen in a moment, waiting for her story to be told. She remained unharmed, not becoming a victim of sexual violence. This motive was rejected. The detectives had to immerse themselves in the darkness of the human soul to reveal what could have been the very motive that pushed someone to commit the crime. Perhaps behind this crime lurked a simple but cruel motive of robbery. The stranger, like a shadow, penetrated her life and took everything: money, cards, and jewelry, leaving only emptiness and fear. The girl had an impressive sum in her hands, about $15,000. She had won $10,000 of it, and her father had allocated $5,000 for the purchase of a new laptop. After a thorough examination of the crime scene, the police were confident about who was behind this terrible murder. It was that very mysterious stranger captured on the surveillance footage. During the investigation, it was revealed that room 309 was registered to Joran van der Sloot. He was just a 22-year-old young man from the Netherlands. The police began to dig deeper and soon discovered something truly intriguing about this person. Soon, it became known that he was on an international wanted list, and his name was connected with an incredibly convoluted story full of mysteries and riddles. Joran van der Sloot had long remained in the shadow of being a suspect in the case of the disappearance of American Natalee Holloway.
A high school senior from Alabama is missing today.
Now police there are treating the case as a criminal investigation.
Looking for Natalee Holloway here in Aruba has become almost a national obsession.
This mysterious story began on May 30, 2005, when Natalee disappeared without a trace on the island of Aruba, exactly 5 years before Stephanie's tragic death. This information raised particular concern, and perhaps it was connected to other crimes. The police faced an important task to catch this dangerous killer as quickly as possible. The guy disappeared, and his name became a harbinger of alarm for the police, who tirelessly searched for his traces in the dark corners of the city. No one knew where this European had headed, leaving behind only a shadow of mystery. While the search for him continued, the police delved into the grim details of Natalee Holloway's disappearance, striving to understand whom they were about to face in this tangled case, to gain a deeper understanding of whom they were about to encounter. Natalee Holloway was born on October 21, 1986, in the small town of Clinton, Mississippi, USA. She was the oldest child in the family, bearing on her shoulders the burden of responsibility and care for the younger ones. In this quiet home, where laughter and tears intertwined,
always had a smile on her face, always so happy and energetic and outgoing.
There's Hootie. Who's our special guest today?
It's Hootie.
Hootie Hoo Holloway.
Hi, friend.
her role was not just importante, it was defining. Every step, every decision seemed to reflect not only her character, but also the fate of the entire family. When the girl was just 7 years old, her world turned upside down. Her parents decided to separate. She stayed with her mother, but despite the break, the connection with her father did not fade. Warm relations continued to exist, like a thread connecting them in this difficult world. At the age of 14, Natalee witnessed how her mother, leaving the past behind, remarried. This time, the choice fell on a wealthy businessman, and soon their family found themselves in a new home in Mountain Brook, Alabama. This was the beginning of a new chapter, full of unexpected turns and hidden secrets. She was a model of success, an excellent student who brilliantly graduated from school while engaging in cheerleading and dancing. But behind this perfect picture lay secrets that no one could have predicted. She earned a full scholarship and proudly joined the ranks of the university. She graduated from school with outstanding results. She earned a full scholarship and entered university, opening a new chapter in her life. The girl had her whole life ahead of her, full of hopes and dreams, but one trip, seemingly promising to become a dream come true, turned into a tragedy, destroying all her plans. 18-year-old Natalee Holloway, full of hopes and dreams, headed to the Caribbean island of Aruba to spend the vacation of her life. But what should have been a carefree holiday soon turned into a real tragedy. Aruba is a mysterious island that is part of the Netherlands, located in the southern part of the Caribbean Sea. Along with other islands, it forms the mysterious Dutch Caribbean basin, where every corner holds its secrets and stories. This island, surrounded by the azure waters of the Caribbean Sea, is considered one of the safest places in this mysterious region, where mysteries and stories intertwine with serenity. In this place, crime practically doesn't exist. In the dream vacation organized by the school for high school students who were preparing to celebrate their graduation, not only joy was hidden, but also many secrets waiting for their moment. In May 2005, 124 students and 11 teachers headed to that mysterious island, not suspecting that events awaited them that would change their lives forever. The vacation turned out to be a real adventure, full of unexpected turns and bright moments. They chose the cozy Holiday Inn hotel, where everything was included, as if in a trap luring them into a world of comfort and carefree living. In Aruba, in this tropical paradise, alcohol can only be consumed from the age of 18. This rule, like many others, protects the young generation from temptations that can turn into tragedy. Every day when they were on vacation, their daily routine followed the same ominous scheme. The vacationers would get up whenever they pleased and spend their days blissfully, as if unaware that outside their carefree world, secrets and dangers lurked. They enjoyed the moment, talking and laughing, lying on the beach where crystal clear blue waters beckoned, as if hiding their secrets beneath the surface. Sometimes, in the quiet of the afternoon, they could allow themselves a little rest, immersing themselves in the world of half-sleep. That evening, they headed to dinner, and then, like hunters for luck, entered the casino and bar. There, among the flickering lights and sounds of gambling machines, they tried various cocktails, including those containing alcohol. May 29, 2005, became the last day of their vacation, a moment when serenity turned into anxiety. This day didn't foretell anything unusual, like all the previous ones, except that people began packing their suitcases, preparing for something inevitable. Natalee, like everyone else, packed her things, carefully placing her passport next to her suitcase before going to dinner. At this moment, no one suspected that this would not just be an evening, but the beginning of something much darker. The evening leisure of the group of tourists was full of contrasts. Some of them, immersed in fun, continued to enjoy the atmosphere, while others, tired of adventures, headed to their rooms, seeking to rest before tomorrow's departure. Each of them, like characters in a captivating plot, chose their path on this mysterious evening. At dawn the next day, students and teachers gathered in the lobby of their Holiday Inn hotel. There was slight tension in the air as they prepared to leave this place and head to the airport, leaving behind shadows of memories of the past days. But the teachers noticed that one person was missing. When everyone was checked, it became clear that Natalee Holloway had disappeared without a trace. No one in the group had the slightest idea where she might be. The teachers, full of concern, decided to call her room, believing that she had simply overslept the early rise. But something in their intuition suggested that the matter might not be so simple. But she remained silent, like a shadow hiding its secrets. At that moment, they headed to her room, accompanied by a hotel employee, and opened the door. To their great surprise, there was no one inside. They found Natalee's suitcase with her personal belongings and passport, as if left behind in a hurried traces of her last journey. All hotel staff and teachers were in a state of panic, searching every shadow and corner in a desperate hunt for the missing girl throughout the hotel grounds. But all attempts proved futile. At 11 o'clock in the morning, an alarming phone call was made. A teacher, with a trembling voice, informed Natalee's mother of the terrible news. Their daughter was missing, and the search was yielding no results. No traces, no clues, only growing concern. She asked the woman if Natalee might have disappeared, leaving everything behind to be alone. However, the mother firmly assured the teacher that Natalee would never do such a thing. The woman was convinced that her daughter had become a victim of kidnapping. All the teachers and students were in a state of shock when this unexpected storm of events broke out. They all knew how serious and responsible the missing girl was. They understood that she wouldn't joke with them so carelessly. Something terrible had clearly happened to her. The teachers, realizing the seriousness of the situation, immediately reported Natalee's mysterious disappearance to the police. Together with law enforcement, they began an intense search, full of anxiety and uncertainty, striving to uncover the mystery of her disappearance.
Massive search was underway in Aruba.
It is now that I ask the world to help me.
A search that would ultimately prove fruitless.
Meanwhile, while some students and several teachers were leaving the place, others remained immersed in gloomy thoughts about what had happened. In panic, the mother, tormented by anxiety, dialed her husband and Natalee's biological father to report that her daughter had disappeared without a trace. Gathering together, they boarded the first flight from a neighboring city and headed to the island to begin the search for their daughter. The mother, overcome with fear and anxiety, dialed 911 and the FBI to report the incident that forever changed her life. When they set foot on the island of Aruba, their goal was clear: to find Natalee. Like hunters for truth, they began questioning everyone who might know something, from hotel guests to resort workers, leaving no stone unturned in their quest to solve the mystery of her disappearance. From the very beginning, they started distributing photographs of the missing girl, immersing themselves in the investigation with unquenchable zeal. During the investigation, it became known that Natalee had not spent the night in her hotel room on that fateful evening. She never appeared there at all. Some of her friends witnessed her talking in the casino adjacent to the hotel with a tall man, a European from the Netherlands. They were certain she might have disappeared with him, leaving everything behind. At the midnight hour, when the casino sank into silence, security guards witnessed Natalee leaving its premises and getting into a gray Honda with 3 mysterious young men. The employees were familiar with these guys, who regularly visited the establishment. This story features 3 young men: the Dutchman, 17-year-old Joran van der Sloot, 21-year-old Deepak Kalpoe, and his younger brother, 18-year-old Satish Kalpoe. Each of them played a role in the events that shocked society. The police, studying the surveillance camera footage, found confirmation of the security guard's statements. Every movement, every glance-all, this became part of a mosaic that gradually formed a complete picture of what happened. The captured footage clearly shows Natalee sitting at the same table with Joran, and then they all left the premises together, leaving behind only a shadow of mystery. Some employees whispered about how Joran often appeared in the casino, like a predator stalking his victims. He looked like a real professional hunting young, wealthy female tourists whom he cleverly swindled out of money. At that fateful moment, Joran was only 17 years old, and he lived on the island with his parents, immersed in a world that would soon change forever. The young man was born into a family with a good reputation. His father, a man with an impeccable reputation, was a lawyer, and his ambitions knew no bounds. She dreamed of becoming a judge. Joran was a young athlete, the pride of his school, always at the peak of success. He was predicted to have a brilliant career on the football field, as if it were written in his destiny beforehand. However, in his teenage years, serious behavioral problems began. He immersed himself in the world of bars and casinos, where alcohol became his faithful companion and partys's usual shelter. All the evidence pointed to this young Dutch man. Parents desperately searching for their missing children, together with the police, headed to him, hoping to get answers to their agonizing questions. The gray Honda, last seen with Natalie, stood silently parked outside, as if waiting for its driver who never returned. The young man's father slowly opened the door, as if sensing that behind it lay something more than just a visit. When the police began the investigation and raised suspicions against Joran, he calmly stated that his son had supposedly gone to another hotel's casino. In this statement already lurked a shadow of doubt that made one wonder what was really happening behind closed doors. The police arrived at the scene to question the young man, but to their surprise, he had already disappeared. While everyone was absorbed in the search for Joran, his father, overcome with anxiety, decided to call the police. He reported that his son, along with his friend Deepak, had returned home. Soon after, the police arrived at the scene, ready to find out what had happened. The friends were separated, and each of them found themselves under the close scrutiny of investigators, forced to answer questions alone. Their stories were not only unique, but also constantly changed, like living creatures that leave no traces in their path. At first, they both insisted they had never met the missing girl, but when police showed them surveillance camera footage capturing their interaction with her, Joran suddenly remembered that he had met her on that fateful evening. After the casino game ended, she approached him with a request to go to a club where nightlife promised to be full of surprises. He made a decision and invited two companions, Deepak and his brother Satish. The four of them set off in the car, ready for what lay ahead. That evening they enjoyed life, immersing themselves in an atmosphere of fun, drinking, and dancing. But when they drove him back to the hotel, the mystery of the disappearance began to unfold, and the missing girl never appeared in their lives again. But in the end, Joran made a shocking statement. He witnessed a hotel security guard showing inappropriate attention to Natalie when she entered the establishment. Nevertheless, the police were aware that this story was just a deception. The camera recordings had been carefully studied, and investigators already knew that the girl had never returned to the hotel. Her disappearance was becoming increasingly mysterious, leaving behind only a shadow of anxiety and bewilderment. During the investigation, they were repeatedly detained for giving false testimony. However, despite all efforts, the investigation did not have sufficient evidence to charge them, and they were released again. A walk on Arashi Beach is not just a vacation. It's an immersion in an atmosphere of mysteries and secrets, where every step can lead to unexpected discoveries. Joran insisted that it was his friends who left them in this sinister place. Natalie was in such a state of intoxication that she could barely stand on her feet, constantly sinking into the darkness of consciousness. She was falling, and eventually he left her alone, as if it were part of some sinister plan. He knew that an early rise in classes awaited him the next morning, leaving no room for delay. But Natalie had no intention of leaving this place. According to him, the girl wanted to enjoy the last night to the fullest, and at that moment she let him go. Joran insisted that he had no idea what happened to her after that.
Did you kill Natalie Holloway?
No.
Did you harm Natalie Holloway?
No.
Joran insisted that on that fateful night, only an innocent kiss occurred between him and Natalie, and there was no intimate connection. But can we believe his words when the shadow of suspicion has already fallen on their relationship? As if from a grim story, friends told how the Dutchman who had enchanted the girl left her on the beach like a forgotten object after satisfying his whims. The police conducted a detailed inspection of this beach, but alas, Not a single clue about the missing girl's whereabouts was found. Among the shadows of hotels, where secrets hide behind every corner, one of the gardeners decided to make a revelation. He gave law enforcement officers a new clue that could change the course of the investigation. He said he witnessed 3 young men, Joran, Deepak, and Satish, digging a hole on an abandoned plot of land near a pond on that ominous night when the girl disappeared without a trace. The police, like hunters for truth, arrived at the place where, according to rumors, secrets were hidden. They drained the pond, dug up every inch of land, but, alas, their efforts were not successful. Nothing was found. Time moved relentlessly forward, but no charges were brought, and Natalie remained in the shadows, never finding her peace. The family, overcome with anger and despair, could not accept that the investigation had reached a dead end. They blamed the police for inaction and incompetence, believing that the true culprits remained free. The missing girl's loved ones were convinced that Joran was a key figure in this tangled case. They believed that pressure on him could force him to confess everything, but the police, unfortunately, did not take the necessary steps. Natalie's family, desperate in their search for their beloved, announced a generous reward of 100 for any information that could lead to her whereabouts. But that's not all. They were ready to give a whole $1 million to anyone who could bring her home alive. Local residents, overcome with excitement, tirelessly called the police, expressing their versions and assumptions, hoping to get the promised reward. But, as often happens in such stories, their efforts proved futile. Parents found themselves at the center of a scandal when police brought charges against them for misconduct related to receiving a reward. This story continues to grow with new details, making one wonder what really happened behind closed doors. Because of it, they were led down useless trails that had nothing to do with the case, which became a fatal mistake that ruined the entire investigation. While the world around them continued to turn, the parents never gave up hope. They put up posters, handed out flyers, and, holding hands, participated in the search for their daughter, as if in a mad race against time. The authorities in Aruba, immersed in grim circumstances, felt the weight of pressure from the Holloway family. They knew they had to proceed cautiously, not rushing to make arrests until they had gathered enough evidence to confirm their suspicions. All this led to serious complications in the investigation. In one dark moment, 3 people, Joran, Deepak, and Satish, were taken into custody, and their fate was decided for a full 3 weeks. Locals anxiously expected that charges would soon be filed, but their expectations proved futile. The trio was simply released, leaving behind many questions and bewilderment. Deepak and Satish were freed after 3 weeks, but Joran found himself trapped in the system longer. He spent another 2 months behind bars, his fate remaining in the hands of those who decided when and how he could return to life and freedom. In one of the dark moments of this story, the Kalpoe brothers approached the police with a shocking confession. Their father, as it turned out, had helped Joran hide traces of the terrible crime by disposing of the girl's body. The man found himself in the spotlight when he was arrested, but, as it turned out, the investigation had no evidence against him. After 3 days, he was released, leaving behind only a shadow of mystery. Joran's father, a lawyer by profession, took a bold step, sued the Aruban police for wrongful detention. His fight for justice was successful. He won the case and received 40-0 in compensation. This case ended in triumph when the sum of 40-0 was awarded. The disappearance of the high school girl turned into a real sensation, attracting media attention throughout the United States. This caused serious concern for the Aruban authorities, as their economic well-being directly depended on tourists from America. This case drew public attention when Natalie's parents began persistently demanding justice for their daughter, trying to wake the police from their inaction. In this regard, Joran himself did not stay on the sidelines. He eagerly participated in interviews on American TV channels, earning money, and enthusiastically shared details about how he met Natalie and about that fateful night. The young man persistently assured everyone around him of his innocence, claiming that he had nothing to do with the girl's mysterious disappearance. A year after Natalie's mysterious disappearance, there is still darkness of uncertainty surrounding the fate of this girl. A year after Natalie's mysterious disappearance, Joran returned to the Netherlands, where he continued his studies as if nothing had happened. He gave interviews to local TV channels, where he anxiously claimed that he had become a victim of a cunning setup. He insisted that on that ill-fated night, he left Natalie Holloway on the beach and headed home, not suspecting that he would soon become part of one of the most mysterious disappearance stories. Joran, in the company of a journalist, published a book dedicated to Natalie's mysterious disappearance. 2 years had passed since that fateful day, and he decided to share his version of events, asserting his innocence. Thus, this young man managed to profit quite well from this whole confusing story and the commotion that arose around it. Under pressure from Natalie's parents, the police finally decided to search Joran's house and its surroundings on the mysterious island of Aruba. They searched every corner of the house, dug up the yard, but found nothing that could attract the attention of the investigation. This case attracted the attention of investigators and viewers around the world, especially in the USA, Aruba, and the Netherlands, where every step of the investigation aroused unquenchable interest. Joran, like a star in the dark sky, attracted public attention, and viewers were divided into two opposing camps. Some whispered about his involvement in Natalie's mysterious disappearance, while others sincerely trusted him, not suspecting the dark secrets hiding behind his smile. Meanwhile, Joran did not abandon his habits and continued to appear on TV shows, as if seeking something more than just viewer attention. In the midst of the tense situation,
Desde o primeiro momento sempre has dado confesión sincero y
the young man, unable to cope with the pressure and persistent questions, suddenly threw a glass of drink toward a journalist, as if at that moment all his anger and hopelessness found an outlet in this impulsive gesture. 3 years after Natalie's mysterious disappearance, new information loomed on the horizon. 3 years after Natalie's mysterious disappearance, new information stirred in the air again. On that ominous night when Natalie disappeared, one of the witnesses, as if from a dark story, claimed to have witnessed the presence of Joran and his father. Their shadows crossed with a mystery that still remains unsolved. In the darkness of early morning when the clock struck 4, the young man, gripped by panic, rushed from the pond to the fast food restaurant. Just a few minutes after his escape, 2 men, like shadows, disappeared into the night in a red Jeep, leaving behind only questions and guesses. In this tangled case, a second lead appeared, and it turned out to be connected to Joran's ex-girlfriend. She approached the police with a disturbing story about how one night the Dutchman uttered an ominous phrase. Who knows? Maybe now you're on the beach with someone who can dispose of a corpse. These words instilled fear in her, and she was sure that an innocent person would not say such a thing. Despite numerous leads, mysterious clues, and constantly changing versions of suspects, the island's police remained confident. They still did not have sufficient evidence to press charges. The cases against Joran, Deepak, and Satish were closed, leaving behind only a shadow of unsolved mysteries and untold stories. Investigators state that the investigation will reopen only when new, significant evidence appears. Charges were never brought against those who might have been involved in Natalie Holloway's mysterious disappearance. Joran seemed to enjoy his impunity and suddenly acquired fame, as if knowing that his actions would not go unnoticed. In 2008, the world saw a shocking recording in which the Dutchman described in detail Natalie's mysterious death. The scene was captured with a hidden camera, and Dutch journalists were behind this. On the recording, he recounted how he spent time on the beach with Natalie. Their passion ignited, but suddenly, everything changed. She shook and lost consciousness, leaving him completely bewildered. At that ominous moment, he turned to his friends with a request to dispose of her body. They, like performers of a dark ritual, took her out on a boat and without hesitation, dropped her into the abyss of the sea. Then another recording appeared, in which he openly rejoiced that Natalie's body was never found. Otherwise, according to him, he would have been fried. He also hinted that someone had helped him in this dark matter. But the most mysterious thing is that he managed to do all this with impunity. The confession he made on camera did not make the proper impression on the Aruban police. They confidently stated that this was not enough for court, leaving behind a shadow of doubt and distrust in his words. To bring him to justice, it was first necessary to find the body and gather evidence that could shed light on this dark case, but they didn't have this. Some believe that Joran was merely seeking fame and profit, using any means to achieve his goal. That's why he created all these amazing stories. For some time, Joran was in a psychiatric clinic, which he entered voluntarily. After that, he went to Bangkok, Thailand, where, with the money earned through interviews and books, he acquired a small restaurant and immersed himself in the world of business. In this very year, another journalist decided to risk an interview with Joran while he was hiding in Thailand. The young man recounted how he sold Natalie into sexual slavery, receiving money for it, which he then shared with the Kalpo brothers who had helped him in this horrible affair. He also said that he sent Thai women into slavery in the Netherlands, earning 30 for each of them. After completing the interview, he called her back, his voice sounding tense, and said, "It was just a joke." Joran's behavior caused deep bewilderment and anxiety, as if something sinister was hiding behind it. It turned out to be just a joke. Joran's behavior caused deep bewilderment and was alarming. It was absolutely inadequate, as if hiding something dark and mysterious behind it. After the interview, he faced serious problems that attracted the attention of local authorities. The police began their investigation, paying attention to shocking information about the trafficking of Thai women. In the end, he found himself in a situation where the only way out was to flee the country, leaving behind not only his business, but also all his savings. But soon he managed, finally, to part with the restaurant, which had become a real burden for him. Shortly after this tragic event, his father passed away, becoming a victim of a heart attack. The young man could not get rid of the feeling of guilt, considering himself responsible for his death. He again found himself within the walls of a psychiatric hospital, consumed by the dark shadows of a nervous breakdown. After leaving the hospital, Joran faced real difficulties. Now he urgently needed money, and he was hatching an ingenious plan on how to get it. In 2019, the Holloway family's lawyer received a mysterious message from the Dutchman who, hiding behind an anonymous name, offered a deal that could change the course of the case. The young man demanded 250 for information about the location of Natalie Holloway's remains, while persistently requesting an advance of 25. During the investigation, it became clear that Joran was the sender of these mysterious messages. Natalie's father, like a hero from a captivating plot, brought with him an advance of 25. This amount was handed over to Joran at the moment of their meeting on the mysterious island of Aruba, where the shadows of the past and the mysteries of the future intertwined in the air. This time, the young man had a story full of secrets and intrigues. He seemingly picked up Natalie, but in her eyes, there was a desire for him to let her go, as if she were a prisoner in his hands. And so, at that fateful moment when Joran decided to leave her, fate played its cruel joke. She fell, and in this fall, her head collided with a stone, which led to instant death. No chances, no salvation, only cold reality, which took her life in an instant. After that, he turned to his father, and together they buried her in the foundation of the house. The young man insisted that it was just an accident, and that he had nothing to do with it. He pointed to the gloomy place where the body rests. The police, immersed in the investigation, carefully checked the received information and soon discovered that it was just an elaborate lie. This house was already standing in place when Natalie disappeared and, consequently, could not have become a shelter for her body. After that meeting, the missing girl's father received an email from him claiming that this whole story was just a figment of his imagination. The parents of the missing Natalie joined forces with the FBI to gather evidence against the Dutchman, seeking to hold him accountable at least for fraud and extortion. As a result, a criminal case was initiated. Joran was charged. In the world of extortion, where shadows hide around corners, the young man disappeared into Peru, and it was there that this grim story with Stephanie Flores unfolded. On June 3, 2010, the police received an alarming call from Joran's ex-girlfriend, who provided information about the Dutchman's whereabouts. This call became the beginning of a tangled story, full of intrigues and unexpected turns. He called her begging for money to pay for a flight. But instead of helping, the girl decided to contact the police, and his plan collapsed. Joran found himself in the hands of justice in Chile. He made a long and dangerous journey from Peru to Chile, changing 2 taxis, and now stood on the threshold of a new chapter, preparing to buy a plane ticket. During the arrest, the police noticed that the young man's clothes were soaked with blood, which immediately aroused their suspicions and alertness. He seemed to be in such horror that he didn't find time to change clothes before leaving the crime scene.
Plus additional time for drug trafficking, and the clock will run on his U.S. sentence at the same time.
Joran found himself in Peru, where charges of murdering Stephanie Flores awaited him. The fate of this man was decided in the shadow of grim events that shook the country. At the first police interrogation, he persistently claimed that he was not involved in the crime. The young man told how armed robbers burst into the hotel room. They took all valuables and, without hesitation, shot the girl. He managed to break free, leaving behind the horror he had experienced. The blood of the murdered woman colored his clothes, leaving traces of the tragedy that occurred at that ominous moment of shooting. But, as expected, the police didn't fall for this hook. The hotel's surveillance camera recordings did not show any armed robbers. In the silence of the night, when the world sank into sleep, no one noticed how a shot rang out. The main heroine seemed to be out of danger, but something sinister hung in the air. 4 days after his arrest, he finally revealed the terrible truth confessed to the murder. Joran said that when they crossed the threshold of the room, everything looked harmless and calm. They were having a casual conversation, but soon his attention was drawn to Stephanie Flores, who had sneakily made her way to his laptop. She began reading information about the Natalee Holloway case and his possible connection to her mysterious disappearance. The young man began telling Stephanie that it was just a misunderstanding, as if trying to dispel the shadow of suspicion hanging over them. He has nothing to do with Natalee's case and is completely innocent, but the girl was overwhelmed with fear and couldn't believe his words. She struck him in the face, and at that moment, consumed by fear, sought to escape from the room, which only fueled his anger to the limit. The young man, as if from a dark corner of the night, suddenly attacked her. An elbow strike to the nose, and now she is trapped in his hands, which squeeze her throat, leaving only a shadow of hope for salvation. Blood was everywhere, flooding the floor and enveloping his shirt. In a panic, he took it off and, without thinking, put it on the girl's face, trying to cover her mouth as if it could stop the horror that had already happened. Joran froze when her breathing finally stopped, and silence enveloped him like an ominous veil. The young man, immersed in the shadows of his thoughts, could not get rid of the feeling of guilt. He sought the culprit in what happened and, as often happens, pointed to alcohol and the girl's impulsive actions, as if they were the main actors in this tragic story. He expressed his fears that she might go to the police. This act, certainly, was spontaneous, like a gust of wind that caught him and carried him into the unknown. He found himself on the verge of madness, unable to cope with the growing pressure, and thoughts of police pursuit became unbearable for him. However, investigators were sure that the case was much simpler than it seemed at first glance. Among the many versions that were discussed, one of the most sinister was that the murder could have been committed for the sake of robbery, as money and valuables disappeared from the house. Joran realized that a long term in a Peruvian prison awaited him, and in desperation, he decided to try to make a deal with the prosecution. He approached the police with a shocking offer to indicate the place where Natalee Holloway's remains rest, in exchange for dropping all charges against him. In this grim exchange lurked secrets that could change everything, but no one dared to agree to such a deal. The trial entered its decisive phase. All the evidence inexorably pointed to him, and therefore the judicial process developed rapidly, as in a thrilling detective story. The prosecutor laid all the evidence on the table, as if assembling a puzzle that should reveal the truth. The young man was caught on cameras when he entered the room with Stephanie, and then left it alone, leaving behind only a shadow of mystery. The victim's blood adorned his wrist, and on the body of the murdered woman and the murder weapon, they found his DNA. The defense found itself in a hopeless situation, and Joran, following his lawyer's advice, admitted his guilt. She assured him that for this he would face a maximum of 15 years. But in this world, where every step can become fatal, even the most optimistic forecasts can turn into an unexpected tragedy. In the end, Joran ended up behind bars, receiving a severe sentence, 28 years of imprisonment. In addition, he will have to pay compensation of $75,000 to the family of the tragically deceased Stephanie. He could not come to terms with the verdict, and his anger fell upon the lawyer and the police, whom he accused of forcing him to confess. After Joran serves his sentence in Peru, extradition to the United States awaits him. There, in the halls of court, he will face charges of fraud and extortion from the Holloway family, which adds another chapter to this grim story. In 2014, within the prison walls, Joran met a 33-year-old Peruvian accountant named Lady Figueroa. She came there to sell sweets and cigarettes, and it was in this gloomy place that their story began. And so, in the shadow of their passionate infatuation, a romance began, which soon led them to the decision to bind their fates in marriage. Soon after, the couple had a child. The spouses decided to immortalize the memory of Joran's grandmother Trudy by naming their newborn girl Trudy Vandersloot. Thanks to lenient rules, she could see him in prison twice a week, as if in some convoluted plot where love and crime intertwine in gloomy corridors. She painted his image as the kindest person in the world, as if in the shadow of his kindness lurked dark secrets that no one dared to reveal. In 2020, Joran made a fateful decision to break his ties with her. The reason for this was another, more attractive young woman, 24-year-old Eva, with whom he conducted dangerous business, smuggling prohibited substances into prison. When the truth came to light, Joran was given an additional 7 years for his participation in the distribution of prohibited substances. After that, he was transferred to a prison with a stricter regime where visits became unavailable. Joran corresponds with Eva and other girls who find interest in him and write to him. Each letter is a step into the unknown, where secrets and intrigues lurk, awaiting their hour. Joran was never blamed for Natalee Holloway's disappearance, and this remained a mystery shrouded in the darkness of incompleteness. Natalee's disappearance is shrouded in mystery and remains unsolved to this day. The family has no doubt that Joran is behind her tragic fate. Everyone in the area was sure that they were involved in this mysterious story, Joran and the two Calpo brothers. Their names were whispered behind backs, and everyone knew that behind this trio lurked something more than just coincidence. They were called money hunters, and they masterfully caught rich American tourists on the hook, deceiving them and leaving them without a penny in their pocket. At the center of this story stood Joran, a man who was fluent in English, possessed irresistible charisma, and knew how to win women's hearts. His charm and communication skills made him a key figure in this mysterious narrative. And those two brothers were in the shadows, always ready to come to help, like shadows following every step. The family of the deceased is sure that Natalee fell into the trap of an ingenious deception, and Joran, as a true manipulator, tried to extract money from her. Perhaps they had no intention of taking Natalee's life, but on that fateful night, everything did not go according to plan. Perhaps she refused to give them money, and their robbery plan failed. In the midst of the conflict, the girl's life was tragically cut short, and they, gripped by fear, decided to dispose of the body to avoid the consequences of their actions. Most likely, they threw the body into the boundless waters of the ocean, where sharks lurk, and it was these predators that became their accomplices in this terrible crime. But what if something darker lurks behind this? Perhaps Natalee became a victim of premeditated murder, carefully planned and executed with cold calculation. The Holloway family felt how confidence in such a grim scenario only intensified after the shocking news of Joran's murder of Stephanie. They met in a casino, where he, having seduced her, left with her, and then became her murderer. These two stories intertwine, like shadows hiding in the darkness of night. Initially, the Peruvian authorities agreed to extradite Joran Vandersloot to the United States, but only after he serves his sentence for the murder of Stephanie Flores. In May, the country's authorities, as if at a turning point of fate, changed their course. They agreed to temporarily hand him over to face charges in the US, but with the condition that he would return to Peru afterward. The reason for this decision was simple and alarming. The prosecution witnesses are already elderly, and time does not wait. Not allowing them to wait many more years, this process may become the very moment that brings long-awaited peace to the Holloway family, who are experiencing loss, just as the Flores family, immersed in their grief. Joran himself, caught in the trap of the judicial system, opposed extradition. He tried through his lawyer to achieve the cancellation of this decision, claiming that he had not been notified in advance of the upcoming actions. However, his attempts proved futilely. The petition was rejected, and his fate was already decided. At the end of May 2023, real drama erupted in the Peruvian prison. He was severely beaten, leaving traces of violence and fear. In early June, FBI agents, like shadows from a grim story, arrived in Peru to carry out the extradition, using one of their planes. On June 8, 2023, on that ominous day when the plane with Joran Vandersloot landed on American soil, a story full of mysteries and intrigues began. He found himself behind bars in Birmingham, not far from where Natalee Holloway once lived. At the moment, there is no information about the start of the trial. This story is a reminder of how easy it is to fall into a trap when you trust the wrong people. Danger can hide behind an attractive appearance and beautiful words. Please be careful. Listen to your intuition. Don't ignore internal alarm signals. Too often, tragedies happen not because someone did something bad, but because someone didn't leave in time. This story is a lesson. And, perhaps, its most important goal is to protect someone else. Take care of yourself and your loved ones.